that's legal. But like,
Just,
if the check
just like,
bounces, then like we're doing the Star Trek thing, right?
yeah, for sure.
Because I'm done with
Um,
this.
yeah, I'm ready to settle out, to be honest.
Yeah, and has Charlie been picked up by the cops yet?
Multiple times, but not recently, no.
Okay, so I sent them. Oh, hi everyone. Uh, okay, we professional now. They know we're listening.
Okay.
Give it a second to stop spinning the wheel there. Okay,
That's what I was waiting for,
everybody
too.
ready? This is it.
Yes, sir.
2020
The final
Tapcaf.
one.
What?
Ooh.
We're canceling the
I
podcast?
don't know. And the Thrawn Trilogy coverage after today's episode.
There's 2 more Thrawn trilogies to cover.
Well,
And a
2 more
duology. If
trilogies
you want to
and a
call Survivor's
duology.
Quest, like you may as well just group
Yeah,
Survivor's Quest with Hand of Thrawn duology, and that's another trilogy.
true.
But anyways,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die. Hello there, and welcome to the first 2020 episode of Tapcaf Transmit.
Rap
Okay, maybe you should do the introduction. Welcome to Tapcaf Transmissions, the Star Wars podcast where we talk about all things Star Wars, but mostly just books. Last episode, we did a review of The Rise of Skywalker right after it came out. So if you would like to see our thoughts on that movie, you can check out that last episode. But we are today covering the final book of the Thrawn Trilogy, also known as The Last Command. That was skill right there. But we covered Dark Force Rising about a month and a half ago now. We took a short break for the holidays, but we are back on our generally bi-weekly schedule. For those who have just come in with the Rise of Skywalker episode, the way we usually do this is we stream it live on YouTube every other Thursday, alternating between my channel, Corey's Datapad, and Eckhart's Ladder. So joining me, as always, is my effervescent co-host, Mr. Eckhart's Ladder. How are you doing?
Let's not embarrass me with words I don't know. But thanks for the intro. I appreciate that. I thought you were serious when you were going to make me do it, and I was dreading it because the intro is literally like my least favorite part
No,
of
I
this
know. No matter
podcast.
how bad I do any individual intro, I know that you would do it worse, and that's what keeps me going through life.
Well, you didn't need to hurt my feelings, but you're basically right.
It's about knowing
How
each
was
other's
your
strengths. That's what this partnership is really about. If I know your weaknesses and you know my weaknesses, we can cover for each other. And when the cops come to you, you know what to say. Basically, I already made that joke with Charlie, so I can't.
Yeah. How was your break? Your 3 weeks?
Good. I read Last Command like twice, and then I really wanted to read more stuff, so I went and read I started reading New Rebellion, wasn't as into it, and went on and instead read the first book and a half of the Corellian trilogy. So I've been having fun with that. But how about you? What have you been up to? Oh, it was also Christmas and New Year, so all that.
I mean, that's kind of what I was referring to, but
I stayed at my apartment and worked the whole time, so I didn't do any family stuff. I just streamed, and yeah, it was fun.
yeah. It's kind of. I mean, I like doing family stuff, but Christmas is kind of overwhelming. So there were times when I was like, I'd kind of just like to be back to normal. So it doesn't sound that bad to me. I mean, we did regular Christmas stuff. I listened to this book on audiobook twice, which is like 30 hours worth of content.
Yeah, so I started listening to the audiobook for Last Command. It's the first Star Wars audiobook I've tried listening to, and I really enjoyed the voices. I thought
Very
Mark
good.
Thompson. I think
Yeah,
that's
Mark Thompson.
I thought his Han voice was spot on. As soon as he started with that,
His Han's great.
I was hooked. Well, you'll think that's what we're gonna do. I can't do it, but it was fantastic. 10 out of 10.
Not as good as Lando's really good.
Lando wasn't in any of the scenes I listened to. It was the scene on the bridge with C'baoth, and then leading into the scene with the Nogi coming into cover for them when they're going to go to Mount Tantus.
Right.
So there was no Lando yet, but I'm gonna have to go back and listen to some more.
Honestly, it's worth listening to that entire trilogy on audiobook. Like, it's so good. It's got full music. It's got the voice acting is amazing. I would have actually been so happy. Did you hear his Thrawn? Mark
Yeah,
Thompson's
yeah,
Thrawn. Yeah, I really like his Thrawn. He's kind of changed it now a bit in the like the new canon books. His Thrawn is more similar to what they gave us in Rebels.
hmm
So it's a bit more like slow and kind of like it's hard to really explain it, but
Well, I really
yeah,
liked the voice actor for Thrawn and Rebels. I know it's a Mickelson. I don't remember which Mickelson it
yeah,
is,
yeah.
but I thought they did a real. So I have no complaints with that.
No, me neither. You didn't get to hear him do any of the smugglers, did you? Like his talent
No,
card is really yeah.
I'm.
You got to listen to portions of the book, hear all the main characters, and we can talk about it next.
Does he do
Next
most of the Star
episode.
Wars ones, or?
He's done okay. So with canon, I'd say he does like maybe 30 or 40%.
Hmm.
But in Legends, like after a certain point, he did all of them. Like he did the
Nice.
entirety of Fate of the Jedi, Legacy of the Force. Once they started doing the proper, like non-super abridged audiobooks, he did most of them.
Nice. So I guess before we get too far into this, if people have been asking even in chat already if we are, or since we're not canceling the show, what we're going to do next, and we talked about this a bit over the break and at the end of the last episode, but I think the plan is Dark Empire, right?
Yeah, we'll jump right into her. Might as well.
Yeah. And so usually we like to start the show now with any Star Wars news that has come up that has caught our attention in the last usually 2 weeks, but now three.
Yep, 3 weeks this time.
So anything that's really sticking out to you right now?
Think about it. I mean, there's been lots of like rumors and
Mm-hmm.
like the. I'm mostly excited. It seems like we're gonna get news soon about like Project Luminous, which is like the new big multimedia project they're planning for Star Wars
Yeah.
canon. Um, so that will be interesting. I mean, there's been some rumors that it will take place during a certain period. I guess I won't spoil it in case people want to go in
Yeah.
fresh. But there's been rumors about that which have seemingly been not confirmed, but there's been credibility added to them through various others. Again, I'm trying to say things without spoiling it, but that's one thing. There's been rumors of maybe a new Rebels show as well, which is pretty exciting.
Yep.
I've been reading the Kylo Ren comic too. I am not a comic reader, but I've been reading that. It's been pretty good.
Looking for any stolen
Um,
fan art?
I think I did spot a couple of ships, but I haven't been able to confirm it yet.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, the Kylo Ren comic's cool because it shows the backstory of how Ben became Kylo Ren. So it's actually
Yeah.
very. However, one of the characters, um, the character of Ren, who plays like I guess the leader of the Knights of Ren before Kylo, he looks just like Jeffrey Epstein.
Hmm. All right.
If you go on my Twitter, I retweeted a photo, and it's like
Does the
like it's
comic end with
shocked.
him killing himself?
It ends with him not killing himself, which I think is even
Okay.
more telling.
Hmm. Well, that's 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 good. Again.
Dead meme, I guess. Any other news though? I'm trying to think.
Well, the Mandalorian ended in the time since we last spoke,
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
or not since we last spoke, but at least since
at least
in the time since we've last podcasted. So, any thoughts on the end of the Mandalorian?
I really liked the last episode. I kind of wish they teased a bit more for season two. I guess you have a general idea of what's going on, and we did see the spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. We did see the dark saber at the end of episode 8.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're getting some hints there, but I was kind of waiting for another big reveal. I still absolutely love the episode, and it was an amazing season of television. But I don't know. It's just kind of like, are we getting something, another hint maybe? But
I've heard some stuff about like
again, big
more big character cameos in season 2, which are like characters that tie into the Skywalker saga more, and that kind of has me worried because
me too.
that like the thing that I liked so much about the Mandalorian was we got to see this other part of the universe, and I don't want them to stray too far from that. Like there's a certain extent to which, like, great that like Star Wars characters are going to show up in Star Wars stuff,
Mm.
but I do hope that it continues trying to be its own thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean the scale for season 1 was pretty much perfect. Um, so like I think if they're trying to up the ante, they do so by kind of expanding the stakes for the Mandalorian, but not necessarily making it like, oh, the Mandalorian's saving the galaxy now, because that's not what people want.
yeah,
I don't think they want him to be helping Luke, do whatever, or you know,
like as long as he doesn't like get to the end of season 2 and like I'm going to retire to Hosnian Prime now, and then we all just kind of know where that's going, but.
that would be sad.
Or if that's when the show ends and then we get like he's going to Tatooine and he ends up in season 1 of Kenobi, then I'd also consider that kind of a stretch.
That you're gonna make a joke about his name or something. Some lady asks him his name. Mendo. Mendo what?
Mando Kenobi.
Mendo Palpatine. Yeah. No, I agree. Like this season 1 was pretty much perfect. I even, especially like looking at things now, I even like the what some people were calling the filler episodes.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah, in retrospect,
uh,
the choices they end up making kind of alleviated what my fears were when they were doing some of those filler episodes. It was like, okay, this is not going anywhere. But now that we know that it was going somewhere, great.
mm.
So I'll probably enjoy it more rewatching it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's good to have the tension kind of go down for a bit,
Yeah,
just so when shit does hit the fan, it feels like shit's hitting the fan, not that
yeah.
shit's been flying the whole time. To really stretch that analogy.
Don't stretch the shit. But yeah, so I think we should probably get started on The Last Command because I
Yes.
think we're probably going to have very little to say about this book. Do you want to just jump straight to the book rankings and call it for the night?
Yeah, I thought this book was not very epic. I'd probably put it just right under Krytos Trap.
Jesus. I'm actually putting it 17th.
Wow, that would be impressive. No, I mean maybe we should talk about um because this isn't only a book, this is the end of a trilogy, so let's maybe
This is
reflect
this
a
isn't
bit.
only a book. This is a way of life, Corey. Uh,
Corey, don't
don't you
mock me.
dare joke about The Last Command.
No, but for real, like this is the point, and I do get kind of sad when I'm like reading the last few chapters of this book, because it's like you've been through so much. It covers so much territory, so many different things happen. Like when you're reading the last chapter of the last few chapters of the book, it feels like if you think back to when they were on Honoghr, it feels like a long time. If you
Yeah.
think back to when Leia was on Kashyyyk, it feels like ages ago.
Yeah, it feels like
Um,
months ago at this point.
yeah.
Late November at least.
Well, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
right? Like
for
it
sure.
covers a lot of territory.
It is the end of what was at the time like the sequel trilogy for Legend. Like probably still the biggest or the most high profile trilogy for Star Wars novels that there has been.
Oh
It's
yeah.
between this and the Swarm War. So
I thought you were gonna say Dark Fleet Crisis because that's another big one, but
I stick by what I said. Like honestly, I think
um,
between like this X-wing and NJO are kind of the big ones that get pointed to as like stuff that
like Shadows of
everyone
the
just
Empire
vaguely.
maybe,
Yeah, Shadows of the Empire,
just
but
because
that was
it was
more.
sort of that whole
Yeah,
thing and then was pushed pretty hard. Yeah, I would agree. I think even like Dark Empire, for example, would be just a tier below.
hmm
Um, Swing this, yeah, NJO. That's pretty much, I think, the most publicly accessible stuff to just this, or the most accessible stuff to just the general public, like
Well, even just
the
what it ended up
standards.
meaning for Star Wars media, because the Thrawn trilogy kind of reinvigorated interest in the idea
Mhm.
of this existing, and then the NJO reshaped uh, how the series was handled because it went from like, well, it was the first go that Del Rey really had with the license, and it was transitioning from the Bantam style of like individual one-off
Mm.
stories where by the end the universe is generally left roughly where it was at the start, maybe a bit more progress in breaking down the empire, but you were
The
ultimately
exception
not
of the
allowed.
Thrawn duology, probably.
Yeah, they just weren't allowed to have too many big changes with the characters was the main thing. The galaxy could shift around a bit, but with NJO, uh, that focus shifted a lot more, and a lot more changes happened with the main characters. You started getting more plot progression. Like if you came into Dark Nest Crisis having not read NJO, you were probably going to be a lot more lost than if you went into the Hand of Thrawn duology having not read stuff before it.
Mm.
Like you would generally recognize what's going on more.
Which is arguably a bit of a weakness for the later works, just because we do get like 3 huge series with NJO, Fate of the Jedi, and Legacy of the Force, where like for Fate of the Jedi especially, if you haven't read all, what is it, 11 books of Legacy of the Force? Is it
Mm-hmm.
11 or not? Or 9? Anyway,
They're all. It's
if you,
9 Legacy of the Force, 9 Fate of the Jedi, I think.
right, 9 books of Legacy of the Force, like you're going to be pretty confused by the time of Fate of the Jedi. You can still read it, but especially where like we've got the Yuuzhan Vong arc, which is just absolutely huge. Um, it's kind of like a lot of burden on Star Wars, which is generally like a very, very popular property. So there, there's a kid in the bookstore, and like this was me when I was a kid. When I was in the bookstore, if I saw a Star Wars book, I'd be interested. If I pick up, Fate of the Jedi #7, is like, as a kid, am I going to be interested in a book that I needed to read 25 books prior to?
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah, there's definitely an increased burden of knowledge, and that's probably something we'll end up talking about more as we progress into that era. But at the same time, for me, that was kind of what brought me in more than
Yeah.
just the one-off stories. So I think there's a
For me, it
value
was
to
mostly
both, but
like
it does definitely limit the appeal
I
to
agree.
outside
No, I,
people
I
more.
agree, and I do think that the Bantam style wouldn't really work today either.
Hmm.
And I mean, I like the interconnected stories, but like when I was a kid, I was mostly just a fan of like Jaina and Jason, so I would read, whatever book they were, and I would just go pick up
Right.
whatever Young Jedi Knight book or whatever, and yeah, I just read that.
Well, at this point, there's a lot more acceptance of like if you get into a property late, there's going to be some stuff you don't know, and people will generally be more okay with that.
Mm,
So, like the idea of there being an expanded universe for things isn't just like something that select nerds within a franchise know.
yeah.
It's more like anything you get into now is kind of that way. You have the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has that. You have Star Wars, which has always kind of had that. Star Trek. Like any property now eventually becomes that thing, and then you kind of get into the whole like
The Rugrats
franchise.
EU, the Berenstein Bears EU,
Well,
One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest
well,
EU.
Phil and Lil move to Saleucami and get raised by Cut, right?
That's right.
The voice actress was that I was watching that episode yesterday. I was like, who is this? It's like, oh wait, that is that is Phil and Lil's voice actor.
How like not how almost incestuous the voice acting community is. I feel there's like 30 people that are just everybody we know.
Yeah, and I love all of them. So this is the third time today I'm going to bring up Critical Role, but I love Critical Role, and it's a D&D show where voice actors and actresses play D&D, and I could not be happier with it. I want them having all the work. And
There you
then
go.
Will Friedle shows up from Boy Meets World. Will Friedle, not Will Friedle, but Steve Bloom's in
Yeah.
everything. It just oh, it's all great. All such good stuff.
Corey, I'm gonna get you back on track because people are just gonna start turning off.
They're right too.
You should turn off. It's not getting any better. It's not gonna get any better.
We've peaked. We peaked on episode 3. I think that's the one that Alex was on. So yeah. All right. So do you want to get us into the plot of The Last Command?
Sure. So the Last Command is really the beginning of the Thrawn campaign. The other 2 books, we obviously see Thrawn do stuff. Book 1 is mostly about him trying to steal rebel ships and just basically making a presence within the galaxy. Then book 2, he's securing the Katana fleet and clones to man it. But by now, he's got all of his pieces in place. or at least he does after one of the first things we see, which is the taking of Yukio. So Thrawn has this massive, well, pretty large military now, lots of clones. He needs to feed them. So his first target in this book is the planet of Yukio, which is one of the big food producers for the New Republic.
Yeah, and we get like the book opens with kind of a scene of all the orders being given out for multiple raids. So we get a look at I think it's the Battle of Filv that we actually get to see part of. But it just highlights that this is a galactic. They're back up to basically a galactic scale war now. There's fighting going on everywhere, and you actually pop into a bunch of different chapters where it's like a battle in progress. Where before, and in a lot of other Star Wars books, it's really just if a battle is going to happen, it's going to be a major set piece for the book. But something that The Last Command does that a lot of the other books don't is you start off in the middle of the battles or towards the end of the battles. Just like, oh, there was a 34-hour battle or whatever at one of the planets when Pelion and Thrawn are talking, and no individual battle is really highlighted except for Yukio because of the importance with the...
It's not even really a battle.
Yeah,
it's
just taking the planet, and then Bilbringi. But every time it's like, okay, we get a few scenes of like Rogue Squadron in the middle of a battle with Orthivon, is the ship name. I think that's Kot Kristak.
The one with the A-wing slash.
Yeah, which I believe is Kot Kristak.
Yeah, that's Kot Kristak. Yeah. No, that is. I mean, there's very little focus on like. I kind of wish we did get to see a bit more of Thrawn's tactics because we see that a bit in book 1. But in this book, it's mostly like his strategy, like how he's running the war. But it would have been nice to see more. Like I remember in book 1, there's like there's a point during the raid on Sluis Van when he's basically like rotate your ship and fire here or do whatever. We see that he's not only a master strategist, but is also in the heat of battle a great tactician. We don't really see that to the same extent in this book. Which I think is kind of a shame, and something new canon does a lot. We see we see his genius on kind of a battle level, which is nice. But here, I guess it's partially because the campaign is fully in swing. And he's just taking it to the New Republic across the galaxy. And this book covers a lot of territory too, not just like geographic territory, but I mean the book covers a lot of different topics. There's a lot going on. So it's kind of understandable in a way as well, I guess.
Like there's only... We got enough of the other battles in the other books that I didn't really feel it was lacking in Thrawn's tactical examples, but there was one section of the book that I felt was kind of unnecessary, and if we had gotten some more of that instead, then I would have been okay with it, especially because we got a nearly identical sequence in earlier parts of the trilogy. So any guesses what I'm talking about here?
I actually don't know.
All the trekking through
with the walk.
Yeah,
the trek. The trek through to Mount Tantus is pretty. When I was watching or listening the second time, I skipped through that.
Me too. And like on a certain level, I kind of appreciate it because it's showing how Luke and Mara's relationship has progressed since that time. But at the same time, it was like, we didn't really need that.
I do like it in a way because it's almost like something you'd see in an old fantasy book, where like they've got a ridiculous distance they need to cover. Like they say it's going to take, probably with all the terrain, 13 days is what Mara says. So they're traveling over 100 kilometers, it seems. And it's quite a journey. And I mean, it's kind of cool that they're going through this alien planet and stuff and everything. But once you go through one time, it gets pretty tedious. You can only hear about them moving droids for so long, or, especially where we had something similar only a few books ago with Courtship of Princess Leia. Like all of that is basically tracking through and the putting the net down.
Yeah, like there's parts of the trek in Last Command and the last one in the Thrawn trilogy that I just can't even separate properly now, so it's hard for me to even talk about it because it It's just which one happened, which and very little actually. Like the main thing with that walk in Last Command is like them getting tracked by the Nogri as well,
Mm.
and kind of figuring out what's going on with that. So I just felt like that could have been compressed a bit more. And like I don't hate that it's there. It's just that if there were something to
No, no, no.
sacrifice for more battle, I would be fine with swapping that.
It's kind of nice to see Lando and Han and everyone together again, but
Yeah.
I totally agree. It's once you've read the book, it's very skippable. Um, Back to the beginning though, one thing I thought was really funny is Leia and Han. It's like right before Leia gives birth, and they're on like a final diplomatic mission to Philly, I think, and they're attacked by Star Destroyers, and Han goes, "I thought you said the Nogri were off your back."
A
Like
whole Star Destroyer with Nogri.
the Nogri that are commanding the Star Destroyers. And she's like, "What are you talking about? Of course they are." And he's like, "Yeah, I guess." Like,
Fine.
Han, I think you understand things a lot less than you think you do. Weren't you a general? Like,
They were just giving away generalships.
yeah, that's true.
Him and
Yeah,
Lando, just I don't know.
I just have that in my notes. Han thinking it's Nogri because it's like, I don't know. Crack and twist after that, which is pretty cool. There's a few times that the Thrawn trilogy goes pretty in depth into like how hyperspace works,
Yeah.
and because so they're worried that so there's the Millennium Falcon and Rogue Squadron, they're being chased by these Star Destroyers, and also C'baoth, who has moved his ships into position because he wants to capture Leia so badly because she's pregnant with Jedi twins. So Han and Wedge have developed this technique called the crack and twist, and basically, because they know that the Empire can listen to their communications, they say, "Okay, we'll do the crack and twist, and then we'll meet at these hyperspace coordinates." And then they do sort of a complicated maneuver. So an observer would think that the crack and twist refers to that maneuver itself. However, what it actually is changing the hyperspace coordinates slightly.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's basically just a cover for the true information that's being passed over. I don't know. I thought that was a cool
Yeah,
little yeah. Like moments like that are really satisfying in this trilogy because it works so well with how we've understood like the universe to work. Like interdiction bubbles, for example, and the Thrawn pincer makes a lot of sense because it's something that if we had thought about, you could understand that that works within the universe, and then you see Thrawn do something like that, and it's just kind of it's good for world building. It makes everything feel kind of earned, and it makes Thrawn's intelligence feel a bit more real, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there's also like with this scene with I think it's the Battle of Kot Kristek again, where they're trying to think like, how is Thrawn doing this? And then Wedge kind of realizes what's going on with the interdictors, like, oh, I'm overestimating it, I'm giving them too much credit. And the tone we kind of get with all the battle scenes is like, this is all hopeless and we're outmatched. But then you start kind of progressing through that. It's like, oh, actually, this is what's going on, but we still can't do anything about it. And I think all that was really cool too. Just the way
Yeah, no, I agree.
The emotional growth of Wedge Antilles throughout this book, being unable to recognize people he'd seen 5 minutes ago.
Multiple times. Yeah, no, I agree with that though. But I do like how the idea of like Thrawn is just so good, basically, that his mere like the fact that he's commanding Imperial forces completely messes up everything the New Republic wants to do because they're always second guessing themselves.
Yeah.
And
they kind of
they're always
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, mine's.
I was gonna say they're always second guessing themselves. If they have an opportunity, they always think it's because Thrawn has opened them up to that opportunity. So it's like the real psychological warfare, and that really gives a lot of credibility to the Thrawn duology that we get later.
Yeah.
Because in that book, just rumor of Thrawn reemerging is basically enough to set the galaxy like aflame. So reading those two together, I think, is really cool.
Yeah.
So after that, after the main, again, we don't always cover things chronologically, but it helps at this point.
Yeah.
We get Burchest, and we get kind of like the beginning of the final stage of Talon Card's character arc, I think.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
the
funny.
beginning
It's
of
really
his
the
open
fact that-
credit line with the New Republic, crucially.
Yes. Where he's just
I love
like,
how Luke can
well,
just authorize that. It's like, yeah, my sister's the chief
kinda
of state, so
strange.
I can just do these.
Not even chief of state at this point. She's
Or,
just
yeah. That's
yeah.
Corellian trilogy seeping in from
But
when
it's
Mon
like
Mothma sends Luke to help get Lando get laid. Like, Jesus Christ.
Luke, this is perhaps your most important mission yet.
Lando's in the middle of a
Lando's
dry
in a
spell.
super dry
It's important for
starting to
you
come onto
too
me,
to go.
But anyway, we see that the clones are kind of a like Thrawn using clones. It's smart from a logistical perspective, but the second he starts using clones, he basically pisses off like a lot of people. Like a lot of the smugglers become scared of him. Talon Card, once he finds out how quickly the clones are being grown, is even more scared. He's a reluctant supporter of the New Republic. Mara, although she probably would have turned good either way, she couches her turn in the fact that there are clones there. She says she'd seen the clone, or she was young enough to remember, or old enough to remember something about the Clone Wars.
That's actually something I wanted to talk about was Mara's character growth throughout both these books and kind of how she ends up getting portrayed later, which may be more of a conversation for later episodes more so than now. But just how much of what she's doing is a reflection of her, like she's generally inherently more aligned with the good side, or even if not the New Republic, at least not being Imperial. Versus and that her evilness is just or like her desire to kill Luke being the main thing, but just her general lack of a desire to work with the New Republic is kind of this leftover influence from Palpatine. But then in some of the future books, before we get back to Timothy Zahn handling her, we kind of get a portrayal of her as like very pro-Imperial still. And how much do you think actually comes from this, and how much is in the text with this versus how much is fan perceptions or other authors not really going the direction that was kind of laid out here?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's pretty clear. There's one moment in this book that really solidifies Mara's character, and that's the attempted stealing of the twins, or the kidnapping of the twins. Because Mara has literally no reason to, besides for protecting herself, which she does, she's got no reason to stick her neck out for Leia. The only reason she does so is because she's got empathy, I guess, and also because Leia had been like starting to become a friend to her. Not, I guess it's more so afterward that they have that talk, but still, like, that alone, I think, really solidifies everything. And once she breaks the Emperor's spell, which happens, I think, when they're walking towards Mount Tantus, and everything kind of falls into place for her. She realizes that Luke is Anakin's son, and that Palpatine was really just trying to get at Vader with everything. And she realizes basically how she's been manipulated. And she stops trying to like correct against her kind of baser judgments, because she is a good person. She's just been mind washed and manipulated from basically birth to be this, soldier of the Empire. So I think Timothy Zahn sets her character up basically. Maybe not the romance stuff, although I guess there is a little bit in the final chapter. But
I think it's something that was kind of left open, but I don't think that was his intent going in.
I agree. Although the fact that she gets Luke's lightsaber, even if not from a romantic perspective, means that he wanted her to be a very big character.
Yeah.
And I just kind of wonder, you set up a universe where you've got this really powerful Jedi with a history with Luke, then Luke itself. Both of them are without romantic attachments. They're about the same age. Luke gives her their lightsaber, or his lightsaber. They're meant to be connected. And I kind of wonder, like, how in a universe as like schlocky as Star Wars, how you can't kind of know that that's what's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and crucially, the whole Jedi don't get married thing hadn't really been set up directly. Like,
Yeah.
it may have been a thing that George Lucas was intending from the get-go, but it wasn't this established part of the media as we knew it. And kind of the thing that George Lucas always points to, or that gets brought up as one of the reasons that George isn't a huge fan of Mara, is like Luke isn't supposed to get married; he's a Jedi. But as far as the broader expanded universe was concerned when the Thrawn Trilogy came out, that wasn't a thing yet, really. But one of the things with
I still
Mara that
fundamentally
comes
disagree
out
with that.
is like no one's ever really said, I'm going to kill you and then actually done it, like for months in advance. So that's usually a sign against like her
Yeah.
being serious about this. So sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, that's a great point. I mean, Leia says the exact same thing too when they talk um after the attempted
Yeah.
kidnapping. But I always thought George Lucas's kind of being against Jedi marriage was weird because when I watch the prequels, I don't get the idea that like all of this weird like doctrine and rules that the Jedi have. I don't get the feeling that that's meant to be portrayed in a positive light. Like
No.
for me, like the relationship between Padme and Anakin, like that's a good thing. It turns out poorly because he has to follow all of these Jedi rules. He can't talk about like being scared of your wife dying during childbirth is like a very normal
And
thing,
sorry, I just had
especially if
a
you.
Windows pop up. That's no one else's computer. That's my bad. So sorry. Go
Okay,
ahead.
oh, it's okay. Um, I was just saying that yeah, being scared of your wife dying during childbirth is normal, especially if you've had a very traumatic past. The whole like series basically tells us that it's impossible to stop humans from falling in love. We have love is and family connection is what saves Vader at the end of the day. So like
Yeah.
why then would you be against marriage? Like it just for me that I'm not going to tell George he doesn't understand Star Wars because obviously he does. He made it, but I to me like being against that kind of misses the point, I think.
Well, it's definitely a good critique of the Jedi Order. Just as like you, there's only so much compassion you can preach when you're also preaching complete detachment. And like, yeah, there's the fear of like it will lead to fear, jealousy, anger, suffering,
Right.
but
Two ways to
it's
deal with that.
yeah.
Like talking to Yoda and Yoda not saying she dies, like Ivan Drago.
And like everyone knows that all the Jedi had like unofficial relationships, so
Yeah.
it even happens in uh
Tell me, okay, you're gonna tell me Mace Windu wasn't, partying on the weekends. He was big time.
well, you look at the
Uh,
Clone Wars, and that's a series with George Lucas's involvement more so than anything else other than the movies, and we get like the Obi-Wan
exactly.
stuff. So
And he's like the most rigid of the Jedi. Like Qui-Gon, for example. I can't imagine Qui-Gon like I can't imagine Qui-Gon like not taking a wife because of Jedi reasons. Like I don't know. Like I can imagine Qui-Gon being just as good of a Jedi and dealing with fear and everything else will not you know will not really compromising his character and having a wife.
yeah, and like
Um
Obi-Wan is sort of the stand-in for like the best of the Jedi following their code in the prequels. And the fact that we even get that from him is pretty indicative of what's going
exactly.
on.
Left the order for her, so
Yeah.
um
But they, like you'd also
he
have
should
to
have
assume that literally everyone is a completely, especially Obi-Wan, is like a blind idiot and doesn't notice what's going on with Padme and Anakin and has been since they met. Like
like if you're ever in like a group of friends, if two of them start banging, it's always really obvious. Like, come on.
Padme, you seem
Well,
very pregnant. How did this happen? Oh, where's Anakin been?
Padme and I are going. She's gonna help me with my lightsaber training. Like, and like the tragedy of Obi-Wan too is it's pretty obvious that he knew about Padme and Anakin.
Yeah, he was just
By
trying to
the
be a bro
time,
about it, and then gets
yeah, true bro. Like he probably could have talked Anakin off the ledge. If Obi-Wan had been there, um, when Palpatine kind of emerged, and Palpatine probably emerged because he wasn't there because they were split up. But if he had been there, he probably could have been like the father figure that Anakin needed, or the maybe not father figure, but the friend
yeah.
or the just support generally that he needed.
And so,
Um,
if people would like to see more of our discussion of the Revenge of the Sith novelization, you can find that.
but anyway, that's why I don't get like I
Yeah,
think there are reasons not to like Mara Jade. She's a little cliche sometimes. I personally like her as a
me
character.
too.
Um, but the whole Jedi don't get married thing I've always thought is so stupid. At
Mm-hmm.
least if you're gonna yeah. If they're gonna be old monks like Obi-Wan is in episode 4, that's fine, but that's like really the only movie that portrayed them that way.
Well, it was kind of like an extrapolation of everything Obi-Wan was doing on Tatooine. It's like Obi-Wan was wearing that robe, which you'd assume
Yeah.
is because of the environment that he was wearing that, but no, that's the standard outfit of the Jedi. And Obi-Wan apparently wasn't getting laid on Tatooine, so no Jedi got laid.
Yeah. Um that's like Star Wars' biggest problem. It's like all
Yeah.
Twi'leks are dancers, all Hutts are criminals, all Mandalorians are bounty hunters, or all people who wear armor like that are bounty hunters.
It's
The first
basically an
thing you
immediate
see
flanderization of everything that gets mentioned in Star Wars.
first thing you see about a species or a person or just anything dictates everything about them.
Yeah. But, eh. So,
We got really off track
yeah,
there.
well, I think that's all very important to the characterization of Mara Jade. Well,
I do
that
agree.
was a question that we had come up in the emails as well. Was about so if we want to just finish off this with that question,
Sure.
I'll stop delaying and read it right off because I have totally found the question. I was wondering. Nope, that's And why do you think that Mara Jade, even if she never meets Luke, is banned from Disney canon? She seems like she could still be a great character as Emperor, Hand Smuggler. I don't think she's really banned. It's just like all the essential parts of Mara wouldn't like, and
Yeah.
how she relates to people wouldn't really be there. There'd probably be like the kind of the Inquisitors have taken over that role, so Trilla would kind of almost fill that role now. All right. Do I have a co-host? Eck? Womp womp. Can you guys hear me at least? Right, we are apparently having technical difficulties, maybe? I don't know. It seems like it's still working on my end. I'm going to move. Oh, just a second. Mic failed. All right. So nothing's going wrong. Everything's fine here. We're all fine. How are you? Uh, okay, I was worried that you guys can hear me either, and that's all that really matters. But yeah. So I don't think Mara is necessarily banned. It's just like the things that we'd associate most with her. Those plots aren't really going to go anywhere. So if she got put back in, it wouldn't really be to do much.
You hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Sorry about
Perfect.
that.
No, you
Yeah,
better be
my mic
sorry.
just fell. I'm very sorry. That was not cool of me.
Not cool or epic. But yeah,
No, you're right though. Like, there's no real room for Mara anymore. I do like how at the beginning of the Last Jedi novelization, Luke dreams basically about his life, had he not become a Jedi. And I was like, oh, because he talks about settling down with a woman. They could have made it Mara, but it's what's her name? The other, his friend from Tatooine who appears in the deleted scenes. Is it Tammy or?
I don't remember. I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't read the novelization. I want to, but I have never gotten around to it.
I'm excited for the episode 9 novelization because that thing's probably going to be massive.
It's going to be its own trilogy.
Yeah. So what's next? I guess so. We talked about Mara. We answered the question. I kind of want to talk about Winter because I remember when I first read this book for the first time, and I mentioned this. I feel like it really does set Winter up to be
the fourth member of the.
Like,
I guess there's already 4 with Chewie, but
no, that. But also, you kind of don't realize as much if you don't separate your mind as like someone who's read it before. But I feel like it's meant to set Winter up as a perhaps secret agent for the Empire.
For the Empire? Okay, I didn't get that. So
yeah, because
this interests me. I'd like to subscribe to your newsletter.
So we know that she has an amazing memory. We know that she's very close to everybody. We know that she's basically running the program to help try to find Delta Source. There are some occasions where she acts pretty sketchy. If you don't know the kind of character she is, like she'll walk off basically, and something will happen, or like I'm just trying to think of other examples, but yeah, I don't know. I do think that she's supposed to be set up as the kind of fall guy, and then it's like, no, it's actually a plant.
Yeah. Well, I definitely get that, like using her as an intended Delta Source misdirect. But so were you thinking that she was being set up to actually be eventually revealed to be an Imperial agent, or?
No. I just think I think Timothy Zahn is like teasing it that she might be, and then turns out she's actually good.
Turns out it was the foliage we should have been watching the whole time.
Right. But I mean, like, part of the fact is she's basically readily accepted into the inner circle of the Skywalkers and the Solos. Like, it's basically like she is as close as anyone else without that last name.
Mm-hmm.
And that's mostly because of her upbringing with Leia. So it's like possible that something could have happened, whether she was paid off or whatever. She's just tired of having to take Jaina and Jason, that she swapped sides.
So that was kind of the thing that when I originally read it made me not think it was her, just because like it was supposed to be all this evidence and maybe you're supposed to think it, but ultimately that bond with Leia was more important. And to me, like the weirdest thing about her was just that we've literally never seen her when she was like apparently been the most important person in Leia's life until then.
Yep. People do have good points too in the chat when she's talking to Luke about Joe Mark, and then Thrawn knows Luke is going there in the next chapter. So that's from the last book, and there are a few other points where she knows information, and we know that she knows information, and then Delta Source passes it on to the Empire.
But is there any culpability for anyone for not having figured out Delta Source before?
I think there has to be,
because that like
it's pretty bad.
You
want to explain how Delta Source works, just in case people are listening but haven't read the book?
So Delta Source is a tree that, we don't know it's a tree until later in this book, but it's an information source that is deep within the New Republic government. They don't know if it's a group of people, one person. They assume it's not a mechanical listening device because they sweep the palace all the time, but there's this never-ending leak that has been happening ever since they moved into the Imperial Palace. And that should have kind of been the first hint, but...
Yeah, maybe move into one of the other 10 million skyscrapers in Imperial City.
Yeah, there's like 6 things that happen in this book. There's like, we're still finding all the Empire's secrets. Like, you have a massive leak. You're getting broken into left and right. They're like, this is just bad. This is terrible. Whoever was in charge of this plan should be fired. And what it turns out is that in like the kind of main foyer, there's a series of trees that are working as organic microphones that kind of light up, and that's how Leia finds out that they're doing stuff. And
Of like those flowers that when you touch them, they kind of will like recoil.
yeah,
It kind of reminds me of that, but basically like they react to stimuli.
yeah, and
Um,
it goes deep enough
and
into
it
the roots
turns
that
into
they
almost like
couldn't.
an analog
Yeah,
symbol or analog signal kind of.
and that's kind of how they say they weren't able to detect it with their sweeps because it was just buried too deep underground, and like only a few people like Thrawn had access to the information it would have been transmitting. So
Yeah.
I guess Sate Pestage, he was already
Yeah.
gone, but he's on Kutrick right now, so he
Yeah.
should technically have had access.
I mean, but to be fair, Palpatine's about to come back as well.
Yeah.
So
Well, he never left. Don't call it a comeback.
he was gone for he was floating through the void for a few months.
He's already building up his forces. There's already...
Yeah, but I mean, his spirit was like gone for a bit, and then it returned to Abyss.
Into the Abyss? See, that's where the name comes from. But yeah, it's so like Leia just kind of has a hunch and sees this stuff happen. It's like, wait a minute.
Really frustrating to reread these sections when you know what's happening.
Yeah. That's another one of the things with Star Wars. Like, sometimes it downplays everyone else doing their job because one of the main characters needs to figure out everything. Just the amount of access that they have is ridiculous. So, like, if you're just picturing yourself living in this galaxy or working for that government and just seeing what goes on, and like if any, like she eventually becomes the chief of state. At first, she's just like a regular senator, and all this is happening. She gets like clearance to do whatever she wants. She breaks so many laws, but it's okay.
Just running the war room, basically. Like, couldn't they have had like Drayson solve it? Like, we have a redemption for my boy Drayson.
they tried to throw him a bone and ask him, "Oh, you know more about Star Destroyers than anything, probably because you lost to so many, so you know what they're good at."
You've seen the side of a turbo laser before.
You're being a total Drayson.
Yeah, Drayson sucks. Yeah, I know. But yeah, so the Winter thing is interesting, and she ends up marrying Tycho Selku, as I'm sure many of the chat knows, and they have children. I think a couple of them.
I think they have 2. This would be a Wikipedia moment. I don't remember.
I remember they're mentioned in Fate of the Jedi because I'm pretty sure Tycho's like an admiral then or something.
Yeah, Tycho ends up going to fight for.
He fights for the GA.
Does he fight for the GA?
When the GA is
Wedge
because it's when the GA is against the Jedi.
Yeah.
He basically works with the Jedi in the end, but technically fulfills his role.
Yeah, that all gets very messy with the affiliations during the Second Galactic Civil War.
Yeah.
If you were trying to make an Empire War mod out of it, it'd be just so messy to script.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. It is Legacy of the Force, not Fate of the Jedi. Yeah.
Yeah. But so Winter was in charge of finding Delta Source, or part of that, and it's a tree. She doesn't find it.
Oh, cool. But how goddamn much have they what's his name? The hacker.
Ghent?
Am I forgetting his name? How much money should they have paid Ghent? Ghent basically came through.
First off, a lot. Second off, he should not have been allowed anywhere near anything.
I hacked my way into the war room, didn't I? It's like, yeah, you're about to be executed.
You know too much.
It's treason.
Well, not treason, just he's not. You can't be treason if you don't belong to the New Republic or don't live in the New Republic. Space jurisdiction gets kind of weird here. We need a...
It does. In what planet does he belong to? Is it the planet of his birth? Do you because then maybe he is a New Republic citizen.
Well, is Talon Card Smugglers Organization considered its own independent entity?
No, I just think it's powerful enough that usually it can operate as one.
Yeah, so maybe it is treason, maybe he's an Imperial citizen, maybe he's from a world that no one cares about. Probably that.
I think if you're in New Republic space, though, because if you're trading spice in New Republic space, you're breaking the New Republic's laws. They're gonna arrest your ass.
Yeah, but how often is he well, obviously he's operating there when
Mhm.
he is breaking all their security systems in the middle of their capital during a time of war when they're being attacked by an enemy and have an unknown information source within their capital that they can't track. And you wonder why they're having security issues.
Yeah.
It just
Um,
seems like it might be a bit poorly organized.
I will say though, the raid on Coruscant by Thrawn is like such a cool moment in the book
Yeah.
because like we see it's not very often you see like stuff from that perspective, like where you see a faction truly under like attack and like full emergency in the war room. Like when they're waking people up, Leia's there in like her bathrobe, and it's just like it's like it really feels like an emergency in a way. There's two moments in this book I think that do like an amazing job of feeling stressful and tense. That is one of them, but even more so, I would say, is the kidnapping attempt
Yeah.
of the children.
Uh, I'd also say at some point during the fight with C'baoth, except for the fact that you know at that point in the book it's not going to work out for them or for C'baoth, just because of the
Yeah,
position. But
you know when also the final battle of Bilbringi is starting, and there's like
10 pages left.
you know you're just like this isn't gonna go well for Thrawn, is it?
No. Yeah, it's so like I was really surprised at how late it actually came in, because for some reason I had
Hmm.
pictured or I had remembered there being more to the actual battle in the book, but there really
Yeah, there's very
isn't.
little.
It's really just
It's
them. It's
also
Wedge rescuing Aves, and that's
mhm.
really all we get out of the battle.
Yep, because they don't like the climaxes aren't concurrent.
No.
Like we have C'baoth die and then Thrawn dies, like, but there's still quite a bit left in the battle of what there is anyway. It's just kind of weird that that the tension doesn't rise and fall at the
Yeah.
same time because like once C'baoth is dead, you know basically what's going to happen. So it's like you can't really. I wasn't fully invested for the battle anyway.
Yeah. Well, you already know the battle is technically pointless
Mhm.
as far as the New Republic go. Like they don't need the crystal graph field trap. We just know that Thrawn is going to die with this somehow. So the battle is kind of underwhelming, to be honest. But
It is, yeah.
uh, the showdown between Mara and Luke and C'baoth is
Ooh.
to me when I remembered the book between now and the last time I read it, it was usually thinking the opposite, that I hadn't been into the throne room confrontation as much, but that I'd like the Battle of Bilbringi had really stuck out to me because it is the Battle of Bilbringi. It's
Mhm.
occupies this huge place in the Star Wars
Yeah.
battle pantheon, but ultimately
Yeah.
it was just a very
Not really.
short thing where you don't get
You don't
much.
even get anything from Akbar, really.
No, it it was barely even a
I think he
ruse.
says doesn't he say it's a trap again, maybe?
Uh, he says some like very stilted version of that, where it's like clearly you're trying to reference this and it's not going well
We've
for
been
you.
trapped.
I think we
Yeah.
need to consider that
Um,
this was a trap or something.
can I just say how badly Thrawn outplays Akbar in this entire campaign, though?
Yeah. Well, he was getting
Like he
tripped by
makes
his own
Akbar look
side
really
too.
bad.
So if Akbar had been, I think the kind of thing that they
Akbar
set
was.
up in Heir to the Empire and Dark Force Rising is that had Akbar not been shackled by Boris Phalia's attempts to replace him, he would have been able to stop Thrawn's buildup more. And at this
Yeah.
point, his hands are kind of tied, and he's kind of playing catch up the whole time because Thrawn has had all this time to put in his own plans. And Akbar even kind of says as much when he's getting cleared for everything.
I mean, still, the New Republic has more ships at this point. And when it comes to the Battle of Bilbrini, that is just Akbar being
Yeah.
outmaneuvered because he plays right into Thrawn's
Tactically, for
hand.
sure. But strategically, it's more
Well, I
portrayed
think it's
as
a
a...
strategic thing too because everybody else in the Empire, Thrawn's the only one who makes the right call, basically. And I wonder if Akbar had been leading the Empire, whether he would have fallen for the feint at where is it again? Where do they fake the
Endor.
build up?
For the
Um,
attack on Coruscant, when they're doing Borleas to Coruscant?
no, I mean at the end, like the New Republic feints an attack
On
on
Tangren.
Tangrene, yeah,
Yeah.
and like Pelion's like, listen, intelligence has looked at it and they say there's a 97% chance or whatever that the attack is on Tangrene, and Thrawn's like, he's like, you idiot, you're about to learn.
It's almost like they're really going
Um,
there, isn't it, old Gilly? Sir,
I
we
just
need
don't
to...
think that I just don't think that Akbar would have fallen for that, or I think Akbar would have fallen for that. And I mean,
Yeah.
he's not able to analyze Thrawn as well as Thrawn analyzes him. So I think he gets outplayed, and he would have been destroyed, I think. But for even with the Smugglers Alliance thing, I don't think the New Republic would have been able to survive Thrawn
That's fair.
if
Like
he still
I think it
maintained
definitely
command.
puts Thrawn as above Akbar, but throughout the series, I don't think we get like hints at Akbar kind of understanding what Thrawn is doing,
Mm,
and especially in the last
I
two
agree.
books, where he's saying like, "Oh, these the rest of these idiots around me don't know what's going on." Thrawn is
Mhm.
clearly doing X, Y, and Z, and he's at least read about X and Y, even if Thrawn is like playing 3D chess on Z that Akbar can't understand. But
I like how he's got Akbar's art, and I just imagine him going, "It's pretty shit, but."
this idiot did a macaroni picture in grade 3 that...
I wish we would have, because he's got the art of Akbar and Bel Iblis, and I guess that's how he figures out about the Tangrene feint, but we don't really get his thought process, and I kind of wish we did, because there's lots of points where Pelion is challenging like Thrawn on this idea that no, the attack is actually on Tangrene, and we never get Thrawn's thought process. Like we never get the rationale of why that's not right. We at the end we get the fact that he does mention actually those people meant to look like Rogue Squadron aren't actually Rogue Squadron, they're fakes. But besides from that, we never get the rationale for why he was able to sniff out this trap, and I would have liked that.
Uh, on some level, I would have, but at the same time, the times in the trilogy where he's tried to do that have fallen flat for me and kind of resulted in 10-minute rants on the podcast. So I'm kind of, I'm happier with what we got than it being a repeat of what we got in Heir to the Empire, especially. Uh,
Yes.
all ships emergency combat status. Admiral Akbar's gravelly voice cut in on the comm. Defensive configuration. Starfighter command to screen positions. It appears to be a trap. And that's something
Yeah.
that happens a lot in the whole trilogy, but this book
Yes.
I picked up on several, including some that are in the like within 2 pages of each other. On page 98, when Luke is coming into to Honegger,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he's flying down into the mountains. It's like, oh, it's these trenches just like the
Mhm.
Death Star. And one
Yeah.
page later, he tells R2 to like, and that's understandable. That's clear imagery where it's called back to what happened, and like, sure, great. But then one page later, we don't need another OT reference this soon after, and it's just something like, stay in the ship, not like that first time on Dagobah. It's like,
Oh, you sound
really?
like a hater.
Yeah, I'm a hater. I'm just here to shit on the Thrawn trilogy.
No, I do agree. We also get like moments. I think Leia has one too, where she's like, "And this made me feel like," or that brought uncomfortable memories of whatever. Um, so yeah, this book does do
Yeah.
that a lot, and I think it is partially because this is like the first of the kind of rebranded or revitalized EU.
Well, there were
So I
some
guess they're
points where it
trying to
get
connect
kind of
it.
meta too that I didn't really like. Like in the
Really?
in the talk between her and Mara, when she was talking about her own experience with Alderaan blowing up, she even said something like, "And then in that conversation with Tarkin, when George got us to do the third take, by then I was just like, that is a bit too much."
George doesn't let you wear a bra either. You don't even have boobs. You're a book character.
Okay, this got weirder than I'd intended with that joke, but let's move on.
Baby. I see in your notes you have Mara the emo teen. Do you want to talk about that?
Just that conversation with Leia, like, you wouldn't understand. It's like, Mara, my planet blew up, you dumb piece of shit.
She's like, oh, okay.
No, that's fair. That's fair. My
Like
whole
how
world
Mara-
died because a wrinkly geriatric got thrown down a shaft.
Like, okay,
Okay,
like,
we've all got dead
you-
grandparents. Let's calm down.
like you had more Instagram followers when the Empire existed. Like, let's get over it. I was verified on Twitter.
Now I'm banned. Damn you, Jack Dorsey.
Now I'm banned.
When the new administration came in and took over.
Took my Raid Shadow Legends money. But yeah, I mean, she does that in the first book too. But at that point, she's still so like mean that she doesn't at least recognize that she's being that way. In this book, she's like, I said this, but it's like Mara said that, but there was no true anger there.
Yeah.
She's basically just like the Emperor's just a giant bitch, and like everyone that he comes in contact with is just like ruined, and she's still dealing with that. So
yeah, like in the first book, and even a bit into Dark Force Rising, she's clearly dealing. She like through the whole series, she's dealing with the after effects from the Emperor. But in the first few books, it's like, no, this is her trying to be who she is. Whereas by the third one, there's like a bit more self-awareness to the petulance. That's what
petulant is
prompted
a great word as well.
the emo teen note.
No, I agree. What about Show Dana 223? What does that mean?
Oh, don't worry about
that. I was listening to the end of today, the audiobook with Kelsey today. And we got to because we were driving around, Gus fell asleep in the car, and I was like, do you mind if I listen to the end of this? Because I got the podcast thing. She was like, yeah, sure. So I put it on, and one of the very first thing that happens is C'baoth does his force scream. And the audiobook version of that is so fucking funny. It's like, rah! But oh my god, it is so good. And look, Kelsey's just like she didn't say anything. I think she kind of pretended not to notice. And I was just like, oh my god, like what does she think I'm listening to here?
So this is crucial information I need to interrupt with. Sorry. According to Jacob Cornwell in the chat. By the way, Corey, there is 24 dryleys in the book and 4 sardonicallys. Normally we try, because it is an audio podcast, we don't read the chat directly out as much, but that was something that was very important for the through line of the podcast. So thank you for that.
I'm legitimately shocked that there's only 4 sardonicallys. He really pulled it back, because last one, I'm going to say that there's seriously chapters that have maybe not double-digit sardonicallys, but close. Single chapters.
Yeah, that sounds right. And at some point in Last Command, we actually get something that is said both dryly and sardonically. So we get
warbled later on. I was thinking it was warbled in this, but I think we do get quite a few warbled, but it's mostly in, I think, the duology that things start warbling. Mostly droids. The snap hiss.
The snap hiss is just fantastic. There's a certain amount of catharsis that comes with a good snap hiss, but
crooked smiles and whatnot.
That's just a signature Han thing. So anytime it happens with Thrawn, anytime it happens with Han, it doesn't count. So if Card doesn't once, that's fine.
There are 13 sardonicallys in Dark Force. Is that it? Be working. That doesn't seem right.
I think you're just
maybe they're just really heavily
we're really on the lookout for it now, In the book, I believe it opens in or no, it doesn't open a Tapcaf. There's a Tapcaf Whistler's
Three of them
Whirlpool.
have
There's all the Whistler's
actually used the
Whirlpool
word
or
Tapcaf as well
Tapcaf.
on all three.
Yeah, but
I wonder if that was a WEG thing or if that was invented
Tapcafs.
here. Yeah,
That's a good question because
I
this
guess that
could
was
be the
probably
initial
invented.
Tapcafs.
Yeah,
No, well, every
yeah,
D&D game starts in like a tavern.
that's
So
true.
Star
There's
Wars
probably some
needed,
story or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
Star Wars needed a tavern name, and it couldn't just be
Yeah.
tavern. So it's almost guaranteed to be West End Games.
He had Cantina though, but yeah, no, you're right. There's probably a scenario or something that used it. What's next? I'm just looking chronologically through the book to see if we've.
Well, hold on. Is Tapcaf Transmissions a better name than Cantina Conversations?
I can't say confidently that it is. No.
Do we need a subtitle or a rebranding here? We're in too far now, especially a word like this was our failure as people who don't understand our jobs, but a word that can be spelled two different ways and even we're inconsistent on it, that was a big yikes from us. It's spelled Tap Cafe with an E in the book. So
it is, yeah. It is. But shh. It's all okay.
Why did I write lightsaber poke 338? I was trying to make sure, like, because it's been so long since the last episode. I read Last Command like right after we did Dark Force Rising, so there are a couple notes here that maybe stuck out to me at the time that didn't rereads. And what's going on?
What kind of stuck out to me is the fact that Bel Iblis can't just help Lando on Niklon. He's like, we got to go back. We got to get an assault frigate. Maybe we can drag this stuff, into space. But like, you've got a dreadnought.
Very, very, very different. Very different. See, an assault frigate is a modified dreadnought. So I wonder if that was be.
Yeah. That probably wasn't the intention though at this time, was it? Dreadnoughts did exist in Western games, but I doubt assault frigates did. I can't remember though, because dreadnoughts were in the Imperial source book, but assault frigates wouldn't have been because that was a New Republic thing mostly.
I don't know what he was intended to have. Maybe he was thinking like Nebulon B or something would be what he was driving, but
yeah,
you're not driving. But no, like they wouldn't have taken away Peregrine from him.
No, he had a dreadnought. He had a dreadnought because, yeah.
And unless assault frigate just meant like a Mon Calamari ship or something, because I'm trying to think of what they would. But then it's assault frigate. He still said frigate.
Yeah, but is Star Wars ever really?
No, but like if you're thinking like I'm going to get a bigger ship, then
actually the Home One was called the Home One frigate for a while.
That's true.
So.
This is we should tweet at a bunch of people. Let's call Matt.
I don't think he likes me very much.
Oh no. Do you want to talk about it? Did you drop again?
No.
Oh. just see, without the face cam, it's hard to tell what's in a moment of introspection and what's technical difficulties.
Well, I have so few moments of introspection, especially so.
Oh,
I can't close this thing off. One thing I like throughout this book is just there are several chapters where people are just getting shit on. We already talked about Admiral Joruus, but I like how basically every time Aves is there, Talon Karras is like, man, this guy fucking sucks. Like, we need to get Mara back.
Yeah, it's meant to be more of a pro Mara thing, but it ends up being an anti-Aves thing. He does fine whenever Card and Mara aren't there, though. He ends up leading the smugglers into Bilbringi.
Until what's his name takes over.
Mazik?
Or Mazik takes over. Yeah, I think Mazik takes over at Bilbringi because you can have command if you want. He's like, I was going to take it anyway.
Yeah, because they all thought Card was going to... had just sold him out, essentially.
Yeah. And who can blame them?
Yeah.
I've got this
that was the dumbest... Yeah, like... All right, so we cleared my name, but I've got to go.
Exactly.
What did you think
Speaking
about?
of,
Okay.
sorry, go ahead. No, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just going to redirect into the whole Smugglers Alliance subplot. So if you've got something else you want to talk about with what we were already talking about.
That's probably that's more relevant. Let's talk about that.
Well, I prefer less relevant stuff. So what were you going to say?
So Boris Kvalia is really insistent that the Empire has to be stopped at Mount Tantus. And the Thrawn duology, later they find a copy of the Kalmos document but it's like I'm pretty sure it's like a doctored copy. But anyway, there's evidence of the Bothan people's involvement in the firebombing of Kalmos in Mount Tantus. Do you think that's what he was worried about, or was there something else?
I think it probably is, and I'm assuming that what Zahn intended was for that information to have been transferred from Mount Tantus, along with the cloning stuff. And we kind of get a very short window for when that all could have been done, because we know that there's a cloning cylinder on Neroon, and we know that this information, or like some information, is clearly from Mount Tantus, or is at least heavily implied by Boris Kvalia to be on Mount Tantus, that we later have references to with the Hand of Thrawn. But the time that, like, they first talk about the clones, page 364, Thrawn and Pelion are talking about it, and they want to clone Joruus, and Thrawn is saying not at Mount Tantus, certainly given the conditions there.
Oh yeah,
And saying he could do it in the unknown regions that he had pacified for the Empire. Yeah. So
interesting little setup there.
Yeah, and that's like a week at most before battle. So I don't know.
I mean, all of this book, all of this trilogy, and everything Timothy Zahn does really just shows how important it is to have a singular vision for like anything that's three, pieces of media long. Because half of what pays off in this book is set up in the first third of book one. Mm-hmm. And like, can you imagine if they tried to write the Thrawn Trilogy with 3 different authors? Like I am making reference to episode 9 because like very little of what happens in episode 7 pays off in a way that you wouldn't expect it to in episode 9, I guess. And I'm not trying to shit on the movie or anything, but stuff like that, and then how the Thrawn duology later comes on and adds to it, it's pretty impressive.
Well, I think the Thrawn septology is probably the most consistent bit of Star Wars in either continuity, and I'm including the original trilogy in that, because like no one gets introduced in the Thrawn trilogy, makes out with someone, and then a book later is, oh, actually you're my sibling,
is replaced by a giant
slave. Also, it turns out that Talon Karrde is Mara's father. So
that would be weird considering what she thinks of his dinner date in the first book.
Is it weird considering what I just said before that about making out with your sister?
I guess not.
But like, there are elements that don't work, especially with Ron's characterization and how that changes with this versus Choices of One and Outbound Flight. But that's the main thing that kind of sticks out as not being consistent with his 7 books. But
and still, it's not bad enough that it ruins anything.
It's more gaps than it's stuff that you can re-add the subtext later, and I'm usually fine with that. But clearly, that wasn't intended initially. It was actually it was 2 kisses between Luke and Leia. Let's make sure we're clear on that.
Well, one was kind of sibling-like, except that it was meant to be like, you got to make this jump, and maybe you'll get more kisses later.
Yeah, for luck, and then for screwing with Han.
What do you think is the percentage chance that Luke got an old-fashioned on the Millennium Falcon on the way back to Yavin Base?
I don't know what R2 was up to with him, so...
Okay.
He had a lot of capabilities in...
R2, bring out your special arm.
And so, like, the defense that, like, oh, is to piss off Han. There's no situation in which you should be making out with your siblings to piss off anyone. Roll Tide.
No, there's not. Make it with RT. Roll Tide. Make it with like R2D. Make it with Chewbacca. Like, especially because Chewbacca is like an alpha male. He's hairy. He's large. He's strong. He's powerful. He's handsome. He's got nice hands.
There was a weird absence of Chewie in some parts of this book. Was this just me?
I didn't really notice it, to be honest.
Like, it's not that he was entirely gone. It's just that he'd be like conspicuously absent from small parts of scenes, and it's like, oh, where's Chewie? And then someone highlights that as like, oh, he's outside guarding, and it just came across like there was like some sort of scheduling conflict with Peter Mayhew where he couldn't make it for certain pages of the book.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he was Skyping with Lumpy or something. Or Lumpy hadn't been. Oh no, yeah, Lumpy was one. Yeah, what am I saying? Yeah, maybe he was Skyping with Lumpy.
Maybe he was off getting his own holiday special. I feel like that should be the old-fashioned of the Star Wars universe.
Getting a holiday special.
Yeah.
So you and Mara were back there for a while. You get your life day, bud? You just hear Carrie Fisher's Life Day rendition of the Star Wars song just start wafting out of the...
I heard you got an old animated segment with Boba Fett. Like, what does this even mean?
God. Yikes.
All right. So Smugglers Alliance. Oh, no.
Admiral D. Arthur. Sorry. Anyway, Smugglers Alliance. Yeah, pretty epic and pretty cool.
All right. Now back to the sexual innuendo. So, with Ferrier, so one of my main things with this, and we can probably expand out from that, is with Niles Ferrier, like Thrawn should have known after like multiple fuck-ups that this guy was not reliable and not cool or epic. So, and we see him get called out by the rest of the Smugglers Alliance when he tries to frame Card, and he doesn't show up again. And so Thrawn clearly doesn't hear from him again after that. Do you think that was like Thrawn would just be like, oh, I knew he'd fuck up somehow? Or just too much other stuff going on?
That's kind of what I imagine it, because like I didn't think about that. And I'm way smarter than Thrawn, so why would he?
Yeah, the Star Wars rankings go, there's Akbar, then you got Thrawn, then Onimi, probably right up there, and then we've got Justin.
Oh, that's a reverse order. Yeah.
So like you're up top. I don't know if you're not watching the stream. I was doing like hands up. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I guess for an audio podcast, that doesn't really come across to the.
No, smarten up.
Hey, smarten up. That was a Survivor reference for people who watch that show. But yeah. So. But yeah, the fact that anyone was kind of falling for what had gone on with the framing of Card, even before Ferrier was slipping up every 3 seconds, like dude is just a straight up idiot. It didn't fly well with me, or sit well with me. It didn't
Part
fly
of it is the fact that Card is kind of seen as a bit of a manipulator, or he might be, because like one of the key things is he rose to power. He's like one of the most powerful smugglers, and no one really knows how, other than that he stepped in for Jabba. So I think maybe the assumption is that he's like, he puts on this persona, but he's like kind of slimy. I think that's kind of what they're getting to at the end too. It's like, oh, Card just like, they don't say as much, but I guess my assumption is that Card's probably wiping out the other smuggler groups. I mean, he's killing his own people too, so.
But they were all aware of his defil before, right? Like Card included.
Yeah, they were aware of his defil, but
well, when they knew there was a break-in and they didn't see anyone, like Card's people, it took them a while to kind of put together that, oh wait, this is the defil, and it kind of wasn't until they were asking to go on a ship he's like, kind of figured out what went on there. But like Ferrier is just the dumbest of the dumb.
Oh yeah, he's not as smart. I'm
So
a smart fella.
if
He's a
Thrawn had
pretty
never, so the main thing though with that is like if Thrawn had never just contacted Farrier at all, then would that have probably worked out better for him?
well, he still had been assassinated, but
Yeah, but as far as the relations with the smugglers go, which is a big part of what
yeah,
we see from Thrawn, is like just don't deal with him, shoot him or something.
and they might have not liked the cloning stuff, but I think you're right.
Yeah, because like they would have been more likely to just sit out of it.
I
And it
agree.
was the fact that Thrawn was like directly screwing with them in this way that pushed it over the edge and like solidified them behind card.
Oh yeah, you're right. That makes sense. He's a fuck up. Like, and he gets a very kind of off-screen death. He's like shot down. Basically, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I mean, there's even the chance that he survives that because, like, let's be honest, crashing in a starfighter in Star Wars is like
It's the least
you're gonna
lethal thing,
survive
yeah.
that.
It's
Yeah,
the safest way to travel, ultimately.
yeah, exactly. You
People,
want to crash
yeah,
in the way.
people die all the time in spaceships. It's the ones that crash. Those ones are never.
So yeah, that's. I don't know. I wonder if that was something he put in there on purpose. But the thing is, he's not that interesting of a character.
No. He actually shows up a lot for someone who is so uninteresting and forgettable.
Yeah, he does. He stinks. Speaking of stinks, Joruus C'baoth guaranteed just fucking reeks. He does not shower. You can
No.
just tell by looking to him, listening to him talk. Doesn't shower, doesn't clip his toenails or his fingernails, doesn't wash or anything. Walking around always with his shirt out. His feet probably smell like ass. Like he's clones, and clones are known to stink more than regular people.
Whoa.
So
Whoa.
like,
Whoa. Whoa. Whoa.
listen, shut. You know it's
Whoa.
true. No one
Whoa.
else will say it.
Whoa.
I will.
I disavow. Disavow.
You know how like he's always coming on the bridge, and then Thrawn will come out. It's not because Thrawn's really that smart. It's just because he really smells.
Well, actually, when he was getting these Alamari, Thrawn at first just thought it was a way to keep the smell away. The whole force thing was just a happy coincidence. But I'm glad you bring up Joruus C'baoth's smell, because something happened when he died that kind of stuck out to me as maybe just Zahn not
Even when
understanding the movies. What?
yeah,
Uh,
explode blue fire.
yeah. See, to me, that was more he was doing the force lightning and then got thrown down a reactor shaft with a lot of blue energy in it. I don't think that was necessarily the Emperor exploding with dark side energy.
Yeah, I don't know to be honest. I kind of thought that's what it was.
So I don't know if it was the fact like he was maybe lightninging at the time or something, but I don't think he
It doesn't make
was.
more sense.
But
Because I mean, there's a lot of things I kind of wish they didn't do with C'baoth. I wish he hadn't been a clone, first of all, but I want to talk about that later. Kind of wish he hadn't used Force Lightning too, just because I think it would have been cooler if Force Lightning was like this power that only some people could use. Um, I don't know.
what if he just used electric judgment instead?
That would be totally fine.
In the middle of the fight, Luke's like, "No, you're using a dark side power, Jedi Master Sabbath. Don't worry, Luke. This is
Judgment. Oh, epic!
do it more."
I'm just killing bugs. Don't worry.
Biggs. His name is
Let's
Biggs.
talk about clones though, because speaking of, Mark Thompson calls Hobby. At least that's what I call him. Do you call him Hobby?
Yeah,
He calls him Hobie.
Hobie.
Yeah. This is
Derek
the 20th
Hobie?
anniversary edition as well.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I didn't read it. I didn't read this one, but that is Hobby's in the book, right?
Yeah, I think he's in the scenes with Wedge at
Right.
Christak.
He calls him Hobie. I was like, Hobie? I was like, what? I was like, oh, Hobby.
There's two B's, right? Am I just Berenstein bearing what's that called? Mandela affecting this?
Yeah.
There's two B's. I'm not crazy, right? If there was one B, then sure, Hobie, but two B's. Hobby. This is. I think I'm done with the podcast.
He's dead in canon, so thankfully the discussion is
Oh
over.
well, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Um. So with clone, was there some, was there a hobby clone you wanted to discuss?
No, it's just you mentioned. I don't remember what you mentioned, but I don't like the idea of clones being powerful in the Force.
Do
Like
you?
Luke, for example. Like I think Luke is okay because he's being controlled. I was like, oh, I hate the idea of Force sensitive clones. And then talking about
Oh, so you don't
have
like the idea
C'baoth
of force sensitive clones at all?
not really.
So,
Um,
like for me,
and then it's like C'baoth controlling him, so it's okay. But then I was like, oh wait, but C'baoth's a clone too, so that's not okay.
I kind of see it as the same thing as like uh force powers being passed on almost genetically, which I guess works with the metachlorine explanation.
Huh?
From what we originally get, actually, I guess it all kind of fits with the genetic component of it. But like, I would have
My
been
least
okay
favorite
with
part.
force sensitive clones if it was just like Star Wars Galaxies character generation or something, where regardless of whether the clone template was force sensitive, there is a chance that a clone is going to end up being force sensitive
Oh, I would have been cool with that too.
instead of just
But
like it's a clone of Luke, therefore guaranteed to be Luke's level of force sensitivity, and Joruus C'baoth is.
I don't think Luke actually was. Because it kind of suggests pretty heavily that he's only doing so well because C'baoth's controlling him.
Well, that's his skill level more than, and like I think he was still super force sensitive power. It's just like Luke was Luke, so the he was never able to get the sort of like flash learning that
Right.
would have, and flash learning is generally portrayed as not being as good, but he was
Mhm.
never going to be Luke's equal just because of who trained him and how he
Right.
was trained. But something with that though is, did you get the impression that what C'baoth had done with Luke was what he was going to do with Luke? So like his plans with Leia, Luke, and the kids. Like he's always talking about basically a
No, I don't think
Jediocracy.
so.
You don't think so?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't think his. Oh, you mean to like clone him
No, the
and
just like how he was going to. He'd always talked about like control
like
being what's
control him?
important. But
I don't think so.
right,
But I think he gets more and more unhinged, and like how I kind of figured is once he gains control, like once he starts realizing that he can actually control people, then I think after that maybe because question maybe not if he could have had the original Luke and Mara serve them, because I think he would have been happy enough with basically molding them. Because even at the very beginning, the way that Thrawn gets C'baoth to join is basically by saying you can have these Jedi to mold. So I think maybe he would have been pleased with that. But then once he gets a taste of the full mind control stuff, then maybe that changed.
yeah, and I do think it was more like his plans. Like even at the time, I don't think he started off thinking he was going to control Luke that way.
Mm.
But I think the more Luke resisted him, the more he started thinking, okay, to keep these people around, I'm going to have to just absolutely demolish their minds. So it's not going to be a Jedi-ocracy, it's going to be a
What point?
Sabaoth-ocracy.
Do you mean in book two or
No, I mean, like, in book
that
two,
much?
when Luke gets there, I think his plan was like, Luke is going to rule alongside me. He's going to keep his own free will, and we're going to rule the galaxy as Jedi. But by the time we get to Mount Tantus in book three, I think he's basically decided, like, Luke is going to keep abandoning me. He needs to submit to my will, and when he does that, I'm going to just, like, mind fuck him entirely, like I did with Cobble.
Yeah, I'm not sure either way, but it's pretty clear at the end when they don't submit that he's like, well, I'm just gonna kill them then,
Yeah,
and we'll have Mara and Luke.
time to drop some rocks on him.
I like how that final battle of Luke and Luke kind of parallels the battle between Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi, with Luke taking kind of the Vader stance. Like, there's one point in particular where Luke does like a backflip up onto a catwalk, and then Luke throws the lightsaber and cuts it down.
Yeah,
And it's like just like that scene, um, which I thought was pretty cool because it's basically like, I mean, Dark Side Luke, pretty similar to Vader in a way. So
yeah.
especially if you throw in the Vision from Episode 5. So pretty cool how the battle is kind of a mirror there.
Mhm.
But and then literally everyone shows up. And I love Han comes to the door. Very first thing he does is just tries to shoot C'baoth. He's like so ballsy. It's like,
Has no one tried this yet?
yeah,
Have we put a guy on just shooting him? It was a
yeah,
good
exactly.
theory. Like no one had tried it yet.
Yeah,
He
it
did it to
was like
Vader
he takes
too.
a
It
shot. And I
didn't work out for
he
him
did
that
it, yeah.
time, but nothing like he's got to have the highest success rate of someone shooting at a Jedi and not dying.
So he kills Palpatine eventually.
That's true. He's 1 for 3, and he hasn't died. Well, let's ignore Force Awakens for that. He didn't shoot at Ben. The one Force sensitive he didn't shoot at killed him. This is
got to be other Darksiders that Han's just shot.
Yeah,
it's just like from some stories. Like I'm just trying to think. Han had shot Omni. That would have been the best.
Does he do it to Jason?
Like
Luke curb stomps Jason's face into the deck, which is great, but it's not quite the same as getting shot.
Yeah, with like he doesn't even use his hands. He just sits down and is like playing Candy Crush.
Okay.
He uncles him. That's what he does. He uncles him. I don't think Han ever shoots at his son because it's actually I remember in Legacy of the Force it says the last time that the two will meet before it actually happens, and Jason shoots at them. He shoots at the Falcon with either the Megador or the Anakin Solo. I don't remember.
I think it was on Anakin Solo by then because symbolism.
Yeah, and then
because that's when they were pissed off at him for using Anakin Solo as being just terrible.
And Ben, who does Ben stab? Does Ben stab Mara?
No,
because remember, who's it he stabs? Jaina?
No.
Maybe?
I think it was one of the Mercury Strike to Force people, but I don't think it was Jaina. It might even be Tahiri.
Might be.
Before she actually became.
Before she goes, yeah.
Yeah. Because was that when Jason kind of gave up on him? Like he wasn't able to fully do stuff?
I can't remember.
All right, we're dozens of books away from this being the discussion.
Just read this one comment from the chat. Ben Solo, don't you mean Baron von Poonslayer? Like that though. Thank you, Sergio. Yeah, we'll get to this in the 2030.
Yeah. 226. Nothing to take on ISD.
What do you think of the birth of the twins, speaking of?
Very clean, very epic. Han,
I think it's a pretty good scene, considering anytime there's like birth or childbirth or mothering written by like a man, especially in science fiction.
Yeah, there was just little enough detail that he didn't have the opportunity to.
I'm not gonna lie, man, I got pretty sad thinking about like what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
where it's like talking
definitely.
About, like, Jason and Jaina and like their connection and stuff, especially when you listen to the audiobook with like the music and stuff. It's like, oh man, this is gonna end so badly.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was the line that kind of got me for that was like, not the end, the beginning. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
This does not go well for you. Well, it goes okay for her. It does not go well for 2 of your 3 kids, and the third is effed up for life. But Empress, she's an Empress, so good for her.
Man, that's so stupid. I did a video I was covering Fell Empire for a video, and how like Jag is like, I don't want to be head of state actually, and then it's like off screen he's like, actually I want to be emperor.
I want to control everything.
Because like I don't know, but I watched the movie what's it called, Manchester by the Sea, which is about like, have you seen it?
I haven't seen that Star Wars now.
It's basically about grief. Like it's a very, very hard to watch movie. It's about a guy, without spoiling anything, a guy goes through like a tremendous tragedy involving children. And after watching that movie, I was just like thinking about like episode 8 in particular, and how like because that whole movie basically is about the fact that this guy is paralyzed by guilt, and the whole basically thesis of the movie is just sometimes like things happen that are so bad to you that you just can't get over. That's basically what the movie's about. So I was like, and then I was watching episode 8, and I was like, maybe it was kind of good that they chose to actually deal with um, these things in a more realistic way, because like the same thing happens to Luke. Basically,
Yeah.
he's far more successful than the character in Manchester by the Sea because he actually overcomes it. At least at the end.
So the guy in
He
Manchester by the Sea doesn't face down the entire First Order.
No, he doesn't.
Fuck.
Like he can't do anything. And that's basically like he's got to come to terms with that. But in Legends, like I was thinking, it's like the tragedy that these people go through is enormous. Especially the Jason and Jaina thing is probably the worst. Anakin's bad, but he dies in war. Like he's very young and in love, so it's sad. But like the Jason and Jaina thing, is it's family killing each other is pretty tough. So you don't
What an
really
understatement.
address it. Yeah, I mean they don't really address it. Like they don't like I don't know. All these characters would have so much psychological burden by this point. Like,
and that's the thing I like the most about The Last Jedi. Like when dealing with Chewie's death and then Anakin's death and Jason's Sith Lordiness, the characters don't really examine themselves much. The most we get is Han's alcoholism and Jaina's dark sidiness. So I do like that it got explored a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, because people are like, okay, Luke decided to try to kill his nephew, and he didn't, and that's why, he went away. But if you think about it, he probably, although we don't know exactly what happens, he probably feels like he killed all of his students personally. Like he feels like it was his responsibility. So, kind of a bit of, if I killed all my students,
Is that everyone who watches your channel? Are you going to be responsible for like 500,000?
When I was a TA in university, actually.
Okay, that's fewer people, so it's okay.
30, so.
All right. So if anyone has any stories about murdering their whole class that they'd like to send in to,
feel free.
That's info@ottawapolice.com. And
Scotland Yard on Twitter.
Make sure to find your local jurisdiction for the podcast. I mean,
okay, so where are we chronologically? What have we missed? Story-wise, Card gets a new base on Hajarna, which is pretty cool. Not nearly as cool as Merker, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, he's kind of lamenting the fact that his base is not as cool as it was, and
that's so sweet.
It's basically like Hajarna is not Merkier and Aves is not Mara. So
just love too, like it's the fact that he just liked Merker, like it was just cool. He's like, I miss being on Merker where it was awesome.
Well, it kind of parallels the Peregrine base thing, though, where it's like, was this really, are you here because this is the best place for you to be, or did you just kind of get complacent and stay here? Are you losing your edge? But
Vornskers. And my other main problem with this trilogy, there's two thrones. That was Thrawn and clones together. But I'm fine with the idea of a throne. Palpatine's got a throne. There's a throne in this. Totally cool. Clones, bit overused maybe. And I don't like its Salamary force bubbles. I get a bit of that on Merker. Yeah. Or sorry, on with
Wayland? Mount Tantus being surrounded by it, or
but also we learn about the Vornsker as well.
Right.
And Card basically figures out that they use the force to hunt. Just basically figures it out, which is kind of cool. Like I like how that works, but still know how I feel about things being able to push away the force as a general idea.
Yeah, that was one of my bigger things to get used to, at least with the Yuzhan Vong being outside the Force, and
Yeah,
it's kind of grown on me a bit. Just the
I mean those
idea.
are a little different, though.
Sorry.
Those are a little different to me though because for one, like the Yuzhan Vong and their Force thing, that's almost like a cosmic thing. That's like the
Yeah,
Force, like
strip them of it.
like exercising will. And to
Yeah,
me,
I guess that
the
is different.
Salamiri thing is like the exact opposite because
True.
it's like making the Force a scientific thing. You know what I mean? And I
Hmm.
generally like when the Force is kind of just like a mystical energy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm okay with the hunting, the bubble. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, me too.
that's probably
And it's pretty cool when the Vong make their Voxen as well.
yeah, that's the best part of anything.
Get what's her name, lose her hand and her I'm forgetting her name.
Lomi?
Yeah, Twi'lek.
Oh, Alema.
Yeah.
I always get Alemarar and Alora mixed up from Jedi Knight,
Oh
which
yeah.
is possibly racist of me, but they're just such similar spellings.
That scene where Lima and her sister, well, Lima and her sister are attacked, and Lima's sister is killed. I think they're sisters.
Yeah, I think they were
Yeah, I just
adopted
remember that being
sisters. I don't
really
think they. Yeah,
cool
I think that's what their relationship
because it's
was.
like Voxen don't stop. They're vicious. Their blood, it's like acidic. And yeah, it's just really terrible.
Oh, yeah.
Boring you?
Yeah, actually. Nothing's more boring than Jedi getting ripped apart by evil genetic mutant wolves.
It's your favorite book too, isn't it?
Star by Star? I don't know if it's it's not my favorite book. It's just that was
Well, it's not from an objective point,
no,
anyways. Like,
it's the I'm pretty sure it's the first book I read. Not the first book I
okay,
read. I
it's got a special place in your heart then.
Yeah, I think it's the first Star Wars book I read. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it was definitely the first time when I was like getting into the continuity. But
Um, what else do you want to talk about?
this
Anything too
rash, but
that we haven't discussed yet?
so we could talk. So there's two more notes that I have here that I kind of want to address. Um, well, I guess only one really, because there was some stuff about fleet size and everything, but I think we can talk about that a bit more when we get into Dark Horse Rising, or not Dark Empire.
Okay.
Because it'll probably be something interesting to talk about, like the minimalist and maximalist stuff, comparing what we've looked at so far with Rogue Squadron and the Thrawn Trilogy, and then comics in general. But
I think that these two stories are truly compatible. Thrawn and well, actually, not just Thrawn. Do you think that Dark Empire is compatible with the rest of the EU? Quick teaser for what's coming.
I I think it's compatible, but it's definitely emblematic of a time when, at the very least, the licensees were more concerned about, if they were concerned about consistency, it was within their own material within the license. So, like, Bantam and Dark Horse were not as concerned with what each other were doing. And Marvel was like, so many drugs were going on there that it's impossible to say what was going on. Uh, but like overall, the stories can work together and do generally you can work like there's nothing super horrible about retconning them together, and I think source books have done a good job since. But I don't think they were really written by the people actually making them in a way that suggests that those people directly involved wanted them to work together. Like clearly, from an organizational standpoint, when they were getting Timothy Zahn to write the Thrawn trilogy, they wanted it to work together because they'd asked him to write it to take place after Dark Empire. But because he didn't want to take into account anything that Dark Empire was doing, that's why the Thrawn trilogy takes place beforehand. So clearly, but especially on Bantam's end, there was an idea that like what they were doing was better,
Mm.
And there is a definite disconnect there that I think gets downplayed sometimes, but I don't think it like kills the continuity or anything. I think you just have to kind of accept that at that phase, there wasn't even the real intention that they would be the same thing.
There's a book by Tom Veitch. I think one of us should try to read that. I think it's out now on like the writing of Dark Empire.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a video soon about the growth of Star Wars transmedia, like the idea of the expanded universe and where that really comes from and how it kind of developed from like the early days when it was like toys led to these new stories being told, and they were the kind of driver for a desire for new stories. Up until
It's like how I base a video around a thumbnail that will look cool.
Yeah. It's really just about doing stuff that has a thumbnail. But from toys to the holocron and kind of how canon changed between all that. But because like I'm reading a collection of like academic essays on Star Wars transmedia right now, which is more than I thought I'd be. Like I just wanted to make videos about like Chewie's second cousin and why he's important in 3 scenes of something. But now I have to read stuff. It's terrible.
Reading is not epic.
No.
Not at all.
So
but
thank you for joining us on our book talk podcast.
We just gotta take like a week where we do like Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina or something.
Yeah, I mean we're definitely gonna do that, right?
Yeah, I was even thinking it'd be cool if for 1 week we just did a video on like the like Imperial source book from West End Games.
Yeah, that'd be fun. There's so few books to cover, so really we need to stress for that kind of stuff.
I guess it's not possible that we would. Well, I guess if we did this for maybe like 90 years, we'd start to catch up with current media.
Well, let's see. There's like 140 something Legends books, 150, depending on how you want to count certain things, and then there's obviously like the young adult novels, which so we'd have like 40 of those.
So there's a lot to cover.
And if we do every other week, let's say on average we get through 25 a year, which is probably, well, that assumes we're taking a couple of weeks off, so that works. So there's 6 years worth of yeah, we're not going to run out of stuff.
Let's get back on topic, I guess.
All right.
Let's talk about the crystal gravifield trap.
Why should we talk about it when the book doesn't care about it?
Yeah, I guess the crystal gravifield trap CGT array is basically something that can spot cloaked ships, I guess. I don't think we get more detail than that, do we?
Yeah, it's just something that shows up when you have it's got to have other purposes, because cloaking was so much a pipe dream that. But I guess the crystal gravifield array is trap, whatever, is rare enough that it would kind of make sense even if it was just a cloaking thing.
But yeah, I don't like it doesn't make any sense. The Smuggler Alliance is their goal is to steal one, assuming that the New Republic will pay for it. Talon Card really undermines that by telling the New Republic that there's no asteroids left. And they're also assuming that the New Republic will lose the major battle that they're about to wage at Tangrene. Like, they're like, the New Republic's trying to capture one themselves, and while they're doing that, we're going to steal one. It's like, what if they're successful?
Yeah, and he even knows by like going there and telling them that he's undermining the reason that everyone's doing all these things. So why not just tell them, don't stop, and then everyone can just stop what they're doing, especially if he's that convinced that Thrawn is going to murderize everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
That is probably the weakest part of the overall plot to me. Just that it's.
I agree.
Especially when like you end up with the solution to Wayland being just like, oh yeah, I've been there for Mara. Okay.
One thing I don't like too on that note is the whole idea of asteroids. I get the idea that
Justin,
asteroids would.
Justin, asteroids are
Yeah.
real, so you might want to think about what you're about to say very
Oh
carefully.
wait, really?
Yeah, they're a thing that like rocks in space.
Mind asteroids. I'm cool with asteroids. I've got
All
asteroid friends. Uh,
right.
but like the chance of an asteroid going through a small opening in the core of some planetary shield has got to be like less than a tenth of a percent, right? Like space is really, really big, and those asteroids are really, really small.
Yeah, but even with what we have, what we've done with space exploration, space junk for Earth is a big problem right now. So I can definitely see the idea that there is an unknown number, like a roughly known but unknown number of asteroids, sizable objects that we can't see that you could easily fly into or let into this, like especially on a planet as densely populated as Coruscant, where collision with one small area is actually a lot of carnage that could happen. Uh, so I think
Yeah,
that makes sense to me. I'm perfectly
just
good
think
with what happened
like
there.
opening like I don't know. I just feel like you could open a portion of the shield at like the North Pole, for example, for like 10 seconds, like Card wants.
Yeah, they'd definitely be able to calculate what the orbit would likely be for certain stuff based on the information they had from the shunts. So there'd be areas of the planet they can be relatively certain are not going to be.
What they should have done? Used an interdictor.
So they could
Have
pull in the asteroids.
yeah, maybe.
Interdictor
But I
tech is
guess
kind
you,
of like it's simulating a gravity field, right? It's not actually making one.
oh, in Fate of the Jedi, Dala puts that moon around herself.
Right. It's if you're going here for the science fiction part, it's fantasy. So whatever it
Yeah.
needs to do for the scene is what it does.
I always felt like interdictors should have actually generated some sort of like gravity signature. That's why they got those gigantic, modules or whatever. But
Mm.
whatever.
Yeah, it's just hard to say because like it's simulating a planetary mass, right? So you'd think it'd fuck up the orbits of the planets that it's around if it was making an actual
True.
gravity thing.
That is true.
Like I'm kind of
And I
happier
guess
just
that's probably why you wouldn't want to use it as your Coruscant.
yeah. I'm happier with it just being like not super heavily explained and let it just do what it needs to do for other plots. But when you're like actively using the actual gravity, um, that gets a bit too concrete for me.
Problem for me is just like, I know this is stupid, but if the interdictor is just like a simulated gravity signature, then like it feels like there should be some sort of like software solution around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We get things like the inertial momentum sustainer, but that's kind of like the opposite. That's like some sort of drive thing. I think like I don't know. It's inconsistent though. You're right.
well, I kept thinking the crystal graph field trap. I always replaced that with metal crystal phase shifter in my mind when reading the book, which
I
is
did
an
that too,
entirely
actually.
different thing.
Yeah, soonish.
Does that come? I thought like I know it comes up by Fate of the Jedi or Legacy of the Force because of Dallas Fleet, but
It comes up when the Maw installation is first discovered.
oh, it's in
Yeah, like it's
okay.
in Saber and whatnot, I believe.
So I knew it was stuff that came from the Maw, but I thought it was stuff that I didn't think it was actually covered in the Jedi Academy
So
stuff.
I'm pretty sure it's.
It's been a while since I've read it, so I'm perfectly willing
I
to.
could be wrong actually, but I think it's in one of the Jedi Academy books anyway.
I'm just saying this conversation is exposing us as frauds, no matter who's wrong, because we both
That's
sound so
true.
unsure about what we're saying. So I'm just going to say it was definitely
Yeah.
introduced in Old Republic uh, Revan,
Yeah,
and
that sounds right.
yeah,
Actually. Yeah.
who's going to question us?
Hey, who's honestly gonna? Yeah. Whatever. We're right. End of discussion. One of us. Between me and Corey, we know everything in Star Wars Legends. Everything. If I don't know it, Corey knows it.
And between the two of us, we'll just back each other up if one of us doesn't know it. So
Between me and my dad, we know every fact in the universe. Ask me something. Anything.
Okay. How are babies made?
Dad knows that one, not me.
Okay. Checks out. Uh, so,
I know it was one you showed up at my house one day, and I had to go with it.
all right. That's a Maury episode, but not a Tapcaf episode. So what?
Now he's 30.
What? I'm trying so hard to get us back on track right now, Justin.
Do it. Do it.
No, come on.
There's no joke there. I'm not that funny.
Okay. Well, it's just you cut out a bit, so I literally couldn't hear what you said. But yeah, so the only other note that I wanted to bring up that I had was a little bit about Pelion and what parts of the Empire he's kind of symbolizing here, or at least in favor of as a character. What was it? You're really screwy right now.
Sorry. Racist and at times hateful Pelion
in
this book.
Yeah, that's what I was like, because generally he's kind of portrayed as like the law and order version of the Empire, and like the opening and the perestroika and glasnost of the Empire with less racism. But dude is just super racist in this book at times.
He says a lot of things that aren't very cash money. Can you hear me? My mic just did something weird.
No, yeah, I can hear you. I'm not interested in anything you have to say.
Yeah. Okay, cool. But yeah, he's like, he talks about like wanting to slaughter the Nogri, how they're like, he talks about aliens just being like basically shit. Definitely not something we see with Pelion's character later on. He also gets a bit of a Thrawn treatment because
well, even in the previous books, other than being like kind of skeeved out by Rook, he's generally like, he doesn't talk about too many aliens, but he's never really displayed any like overt application of his hatred for Rook towards everyone else. It's just usually kept entirely Rook centric. But in this, there were two places that I wrote down. I might have the page number wrong, so I'm not going to bother looking at my book anymore.
He just calls them like, he basically just calls them dirty, like slimy aliens. And yeah, like later Pelion's basically, he's all in for the order, powerful centralized government, all that stuff that like the Empire partially represented. And usually he wasn't so in with the sexism and the xenophobia and the cruelty, but we do see a bit of the xenophobia here.
Yeah. Like the usual presentation of Pelion as you get towards the Yuzon Vong War, Dark Nest, and all that, until he dies, is like, I think there's some comments from Leia of like, his idea of the Empire is an idea that never really existed. It was like nostalgia for a time that didn't happen, kind of as a stand-in for like general nostalgia for the good old days when there weren't any good old days. And like not necessarily holding him accountable or as part of those attitudes, but just having a different having a different idea of what was going on at the time because he wasn't exposed to it, or
it's basically
he was kind of downplaying it. But just goes off the rails in this book.
I mean, I still love the dynamic though. I just love how like Pelion's continually proved wrong by Thrawn, and he's basically just, everyone's along the ride and Thrawn's taking them there. There's like a line where Thrawn's basically like, history waits for no man, basically what he says, and Pelion's like, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Well, Thrawn actually lets Pelion in on Thrawn actually lets Pelion in on his plans a little bit more in this book than he does in the previous ones, where there is still a good amount of like, just shut up and wait, but even with the battle towards the end, it's like, I'm listening to what you have to say, you're wrong, and generally for audience reasons, I'm not telling you what it is. But earlier on in the book, he's like, there's a lot more of a dialogue between them instead of just Thrawn saying, you'll learn in time.
He says that he'll be next for Delta Source. I'll give it to you basically once we're done the campaign.
When you grow up.
Yeah. Once you're 80,
You're only a spry 76 right now. Let's.
um, yeah, it's. What do you think of Thrawn's idea of? I was kind of surprised. I didn't remember this bit about him wanting to make a Force-sensitive clone army. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's risky. That's
Yeah, like you literally can't control one clone right now.
and uh especially with the whole like I guess he thinks because he's figured out the clone madness issue with Yazamari that he thinks he can just do that and it'll work for everyone
Yeah.
and then they'll listen to him. But actually I think that kind of ties into, does he think they're going to listen to him? Does he think he's going to be in charge of the Empire?
I don't know. For one, I don't think he's worried about clone madness either because he wants to raise them slowly, doesn't he?
Yeah. He was going to let them go
But
from
no,
like
I think
3
this was
on
a
or
plan
something.
for after to kind of ensure rule even after his death
Yeah.
more than anything.
Like it sounded like he was going to basically reinstate the Jedi Order, but
Yeah.
so it's very hard to tell what his actual political plans were. Uh, he clearly wasn't concerned about like dark or light side. The Force was
Oh
just
no,
a tool to
yeah.
him, but it did seem more like he was just concerned about getting the galaxy back to some sort of state of organization. And I know you hate the retcon, but that does fit fine with what we later got for Thrawn is actually just preparing the galaxy to get
I don't
invaded.
hate the Thrawn retcon.
Oh no, the
Um,
Palpatine retcon you hate. Sorry.
oh yeah, yeah. I don't like the Palpatine retcon, but the Thrawn retcon is
Yeah, that makes
I quite
sense.
like that. Yeah.
And I think it ties in well with that,
Um,
even if it wasn't necessarily what he was going for at the time.
yeah. The Thrawn thing is interesting because he's not Palpatine at this point, and he's not even executing Palpatine's will. And his empire, if had he been successful, would have looked far different than the empire of old. Even though it does, which is interesting because it is largely seen as the sort of legitimate successor at this point.
Yeah. And this is at a time when
Claimant of the
Artis
throne.
Kane was around too. Like, if I mean, clearly not in the books, but like from a in-universe perspective.
Yeah, and the Snook Dwarfer even mentioned that Artis Kane almost gave him the Reaper.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I think everyone just kind of respected how good he
Um,
was at his job, but he clearly like his
well, you,
political ambitions were not the same by any stretch of. I've used that
oh, and
word
yeah, it
once.
talks about how he like unified a bunch of different Imperial factions, but he didn't. I mean, this is kind of an explanatory retcon, but he didn't use their ships because he was like, okay, just defend yourselves from the New Republic. We do get actually some hints, especially in Heir to the Empire, that there is a larger sort of Imperial base somewhere, or not a physical base, but there's a larger Imperial faction
Hmm.
beyond his campaign. He talks about the ruling council, I believe.
Yeah,
Um, and like he talks about like ubictorate bases and stuff, even though um, the ubictorate's a weird one too because nothing really uses that arm of the empire besides Timothy Zahn. But anyway, there clearly is a larger empire behind Thrawn.
I think it's another West End
Um,
Games thing, actually.
is yeah, I read the Imperial source book the other day.
Okay,
And I was like, huh, nobody ever uses this.
it's alluded to a bit more in X-wing, but
Right.
I don't think
But I mean,
they.
it comes up
But
again
yeah,
in a
yeah,
major way in the duology because they
yeah.
have that raid on the
Ubiquitous
Yaga
base.
Minor one.
Yeah,
Um, what was I going to say though? Uh, so yeah, there's more to the Empire besides Thrawn, and the Empire is supporting Thrawn. But if he wins, the Empire under his rule, which I guess maybe it won't be. Maybe he's just the highest military commander. Um,
yeah. Well, we get the
like
the
who runs?
conversation with C'baoth, and he's like, "When I turn the Empire over to you," and like clearly we know he's just that. Okay, dear. But it does kind of bring up the idea of like, is this actually a thing where Thrawn
Right?
was seeing himself
Is
at
he
the head?
supreme commander? Yeah.
And
I guess maybe the way he talks.
I think he sees himself as influential, but I don't know that he wanted political control in that way. And like clearly he was
No,
in
that's
the
true.
Empire of the Hand, but there was also like that was more of a confederation of like for like military. It was a military junta almost, but where like individuals were still governing
That's what I was
themselves.
thinking. I think if the Vong, and this is obviously again using later material influence stuff that wasn't even thought about, but if we look at like this scenario, the Vong aren't that far away at this point, so I don't know if Thrawn can afford to give like a new empire over to some probably, let's be honest, incompetent and power hungry
Yeah,
ruler.
like there's no way he
So
thinks
maybe
the
he
ruling
just
council
like,
has been doing a good job.
yeah, that's true. Maybe it just becomes a big empire of the hand.
I'd be okay with that. I mean, that's what the Fell Empire is. Was Jag just doing what Thrawn wanted the whole time?
Um, no, maybe.
That's a new video title for me. That's
He didn't do very well because he ended up giving. I don't think there's well, I was gonna say I don't think there's a situation where Thrawn would partner with the Sith, but I mean he's using a dark Jedi for this entire trilogy, so
but it was more he was using Jedi and
yeah.
he was using dude who had screwdriver when he needed screwdriver.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's an interesting discussion point. And this is all made more complicated by the fact that in the lore, Palpatine is alive at this point, and he's watching this all happen from the deep core.
Eating his
Because
popcorn.
there's like a yeah, there's like a bit in the Dark Empire source book about like what Palpatine thought of Thrawn. While this was happening, he's like, yeah, he's basically not very cool. I like Thrawn, and he was like one of my best servants, but this is not epic because he's like basically saying that like it's not in service of me. So
What a what a relationship they
Palpatine had,
had.
yeah, I know it's kind of weird that Palpatine had something to do with Thrawn's fall, which I don't know takes a bit away from the trilogy in my opinion.
Yeah. There the only thing that really had to do with Thrawn's fall was the Nogri. So unless Palpatine had something to do with like exposing the Empire's treachery to the Nogri, eh,
Maybe the idea is that he kind of maybe there were more Imperial factions, and he just kind of kept them from fully supporting Thrawn. I guess like I don't know.
hmm. Yeah,
Let's talk
well,
about
they had like all the Imperial forces that were going to the core for that, but
yeah,
let's talk about.
that's true. Let's talk about Thrawn makes mistakes in this book. Quite a few of them. Um, he's pretty idiotic. He sets up the whole fall of Mount Tantus. Like he knows that like this is like a very strange mistake for him to make, unless there's some motive that I'm not seeing. He knows
Mara would
that
know.
C'baoth can control people now. He knows that like he can at least influence their minds. Then he sends C'baoth with a group of basically army soldiers off to Mount Tantus, like for a journey where it's just going to be C'baoth and them. Like, how is he not expecting them to fall to his influence?
Yeah, the whole C'baoth part of his plan was super.
He should have just killed him. He should have
Yeah,
just murdered him.
like especially when he was so critical of Pelion and the Imperial fleet with Endor. Unless it's just like, okay, you fought like cadets and you're all still incompetent, so I'm going to get another Force user to tell you exactly what to do at all times. Because he wishes he was Force sensitive. Is basically what I get from all of it.
Yeah,
So then he could
I
tell his like micromanaging strategies to people, and he was never willing to give up on that plan, no matter how wrong it was going.
yeah. It's just like by the time we get to like the Battle of Bilbringi, like he's basically ran his course of usefulness. Thrawn is more than happy to lock him up in the top of Mount Tantus, put him in front of a firing squad.
Yeah, like
Or like imagine if he had killed C'baoth after he had taken control of the
yeah,
members of the Admiral's Bridge. Like that would have been a big morale thing.
Yeah,
No one does that.
that like the second that happened, that should have been like not just a red flag. That's a whole parade in Red Square that
Yeah, exactly.
should not have gone on after that. And like Pelion even kind of saw like Pelion basically just should be listened to about who you should and shouldn't trust at all times by Thrawn. He's got the rest down, but like no, don't trust Rook, don't trust C'baoth. That's all you
Mm.
need to know.
Leon did a pretty good job to because he anticipated a rebel attack on Mount Tantus when Thrawn didn't.
Yeah. Well, Thrawn should have
Because
known. Would Thrawn have known that Mara, or would Thrawn should Thrawn have suspected that Mara would have been able to give this information over?
yes, because he specifically he
He's trying to
sends
discredit her, but
information
like,
over to discredit her, but they fail.
yeah,
So
that was his entire contingency
I,
plan for that.
yeah, exactly. So I think he should have at least assumed, especially where he's using things that like he's using information that only um, high-ranking officials or high-ranking people close to the emperor knew, like the secret alleys or the secret doors and stuff and passages in the Imperial Palace. So he's
Ugh.
like taking advantage of the New Republic because he has all this stuff that Mara knows as well.
Mhm.
So killing her or neutralizing her should have been a much higher priority.
Yeah, and it's kind of the same thing with like Delta Source, where it's like at least understand that they have that information and use it against them, or like the New Republic maybe should have done
I was
that.
thinking about that. Like they could have fed Thrawn a ton of false information. Problem is the tree probably heard Leia discover it.
Yeah, but how much can you really blame them for that? They had a tree spying on them for years or months. So
Like if the New Republic had discovered it before, like if Leia had been more secretive, they could have like maybe sold the feint
Dangren,
at Tangerine a bit more. Yeah.
or I think Thrawn probably would have picked up from that with his suspicions about, unless he was just so blindly trusting in Delta Source, because there had to have been other reasons that he wasn't believing it was Tangren that we just aren't
Yeah.
privy to.
Yeah.
Unless it was just too not
Part of it,
obviously obvious that it was going to be Tangren.
I think part of it's just the calculus too. The fact that a loss at Tangerine is not a big deal
Yeah,
in the end. He explains this to Pelion. The New Republic's going to probably figure out what's going on at Coruscant eventually anyway. However, relying on an attack at Bilbringi, the risk is relatively low, but he could have killed a lot of the New Republic fleet.
including
It was
Akbar.
going to
Well, they weren't going to kill
question
Akbar for a messenger, but
yeah, that's my question for you. Is it worth not killing Akbar in order to discredit him, do you think?
no, because he's already played that card. It didn't work, and like there's nothing. If it had happened earlier when there's still Borsk trying to uh, play for his job, then sure. But as it is, it's like people already know you're trying to do this to screw over Akbar. They're just gonna think like, okay, Thrawn did this on purpose to send a message. No one's gonna be like, oh, well, actually, Akbar is in on this plan, and that's why Thrawn didn't shoot him. Especially after he literally did that with Mara. Yeah, assuming the same stuff happened, like he should have
Um,
known that it wasn't gonna work. But
so, like the best case scenario is okay, you take Akbar out of the fight and you cause chaos in the New Republic, but you're guaranteed to do that if you have this massive victory
yeah,
anyway.
if Akbar is dead,
Although,
he's dead. He's no longer a threat in any way. Maybe he's
I'll
a
say
martyr.
though, he wouldn't have won if he wins this battle. Um, I don't think that the campaign is like I think maybe he's got an advantage now, but
Thrawn or
like
Akbar?
it was two sector fleets, Thrawn.
Yeah.
It's not over at this
Well,
point.
Thrawn. I don't think Thrawn had ever really suspected that or intended that this would be the end of
Oh
major
no, I don't think
operations. But
just what it feels like because it is the ultimate battle. But
yeah. Well, that's it. Kind of just is the whole thing
but
where like this is not the Battle of Bilbringi is not really important on its own merits. It's just what happens at it with Rook and Thrawn.
When it comes to Rook and the killing of Thrawn, what do you think was so artfully done? Is it because like is it the campaign up to that point and he's like lamenting not getting to see it through?
My take on it was always
Is
that
it
he was talking about the deception of the Nogri, but
too? But then when I thought about it, it really
it
wasn't.
wasn't. But
Yeah,
I'm not sure what else he could be talking about.
I think that he's regretting because he says "but," right? So to me, "but" means that there's like "but" to something. He's saying, "I'm dying. My campaign is going to fail," but it was so amazing up to this point. Like, how is it going to end this way? You know what I mean?
Is it basically like his version of "I Did It My Way"? He just doesn't have time to sing it.
Kind of, but not really
Do you ever
because
watch Dragon Ball Z Bridge
I've seen it.
when
Yeah,
Cell when Cell dies? That's what I'm picturing right now.
sort of, but I think it's more like it's unfair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. But
It's funny because it's one of the most iconic quotes from Legends, but
and no one
like,
knows what it means.
yeah, in a way. I mean,
Maybe we should just try to ask Timothy's on if there was one question we could ask him, I think that would
I
be,
would answer. Yeah,
or would he just be insulted that we didn't understand?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm sure he's dealt with a far more rabid fan than us.
What was the stormtrooper thinking when Luke went up in that building?
Um, but I gotta say, Pelion, man, I feel bad for the guy. He goes through like three pivotal battles, where like at least, well, more than three. He's got Endor, and then basically the same thing happens at Bilbringi, and then he's got the stuff with Dala. Then he's got the Arinda campaign. It's just like
Yeah.
he's so many chances for the Empire to reestablish itself, and he's always there when they fail.
Well, it was it's kind of a fun parallel, not fun for him, but a fun parallel with the end of Bilbringi and the Battle of Endor, where like Pelion is the one that orders the retreat at Endor, and then at
Can't
Bilbringi,
take control of the chaos,
yeah,
basically.
and especially with Thrawn's Code, like you fought like cadets after fighting on at Endor, and or fighting on after Endor after the death of the Emperor, and now it's like, uh, Captain, they're asking order. Like, fuck if I know. Let's get out of here. I have no idea what I'm
Yeah,
doing.
yeah. 'Cause, I mean, like just like at Endor, if the Empire got their shit together at Endor, the New Republic, like they could have, really inflict like there wasn't really another occasion where they're going to get the fleet like that in a vulnerable position. They still had a ton of star destroyers left. I mean, they weren't able to fight because of various factors, but objectively based on ship counts, in best case scenario, the Empire probably could have really salvaged the destruction of the Death Star.
Yeah, and now you can just salvage from the destruction of the Death Star
Yeah,
on Kefpir.
which is on yeah hyperspace anomaly or something.
Uh,
I did a video on it and I still don't know.
I think that sums up Star Wars YouTube in one sentence.
Yeah, basically. Um, what do you think of the final battle, though? How Mara ends up killing Luke, ends up just getting hurt, and Mara kills both Luke and C'baoth.
Overall, I'm happy with how that ended up going.
Me too.
Like in the whole thing, like it was still showing Luke as being probably the more talented one, but Mara, it was more important for Mara to be the one to do that. I think for character purposes. I
Luke still had a lot to learn too, because it shows how much more powerful C'baoth
Yeah,
is. It and C'baoth is a Jedi Master, but there's nothing that shows that he's the best Jedi Master or anything.
no, he was, and he's not even really a Jedi Master. He's a dude with some of the learning of C'baoth. Like we're not sure exactly what the cloning process was. He thinks he's him, so uh, that's fine. But like, yeah, Luke has a long way to go. But there wouldn't have been the same. I think maybe Luke killing C'baoth would have been fine. He's like, okay, this is the guy that's misrepresenting the Jedi Order you want to rebuild. But
Yeah.
it has to be with the symbolism of like the throne room, with Luke fighting Luke as Vader and Luke, and then C'baoth being the Emperor. Like, she is finally making that choice that this is not who she is, and she's killing Vader and the Emperor.
Yeah. It is kind of I do get the sort of purpose of that, but it is kind of funny to think that Palpatine's deep conditioning can be broken just by like a technicality.
Well, did you think it was deep conditioning? Did you think it was a force command with certain like scripted triggers, or did you think it was just a kind of mental hang up for Mara about the life she lost?
I think it was more than a mental hang up. And I do think it even might be force related because she talks about how once I mean there's two ways you can say this. We know that as she becomes more powerful with the force, these visions increase. I mean, that could be because she starts to get a taste of her old life again. It could be because Palpatine's got some sort of, residual force powers. It's hard to say. But I always did see it as more than just a mental hang up.
Mm-hmm. Well, like Leia and Luke kind of heavily hint towards it being like an actual force related thing, but I think there's kind of an element of all of it. Or
Yeah.
Palpatine's like literally just on Biss, like, yo, kill Luke. Oh, come on.
Do
Fucking
it.
do it.
Do it. Yeah. It is kind of interesting though how C'baoth, the longer this goes on, the more self-centered and the more cocky he becomes. He talks about how Palpatine never gained the ability to control minds like he did. Yet this trilogy is basically about somebody, Mara, having her mind controlled by Palpatine even after he's dead.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like C'baoth thinks he's the hottest shit that's ever been in the galaxy, yet Palpatine is like still controlling shit from beyond the grave.
Yeah.
It just shows C'baoth's arrogance.
Yeah, the whole series is really just a big F you to C'baoth.
Yeah, he sucks and he stinks.
Yeah.
He stinks like shit.
Okay, that was implied. So I didn't think we
Makes me
needed to
mad.
go all the way there, but
I just imagine what he'd be like, just coming out in his goddamn bathrobe, chest hair everywhere,
it seems like
dirty
you're
ass.
getting really hung up on the chest hair here.
It's the cover of the books, man.
Yeah, but it just keeps coming up, much like the chest hair.
I haven't dreamt about it or anything. Not every night for the past 6 years.
Okay, so we're finally getting to the root of the issues. Is there a certain amount of jealousy that's happening here?
You must wash Joruus C'baoth. No.
That would have been a much worse command.
We were talking about this off stream. I do like how the 3 books have titles that can reread in multiple ways.
Yeah.
Dark Force Rising can be the fleet or the clones.
I think we were just talking about this on a different stream, but
yeah, I think we were. Heir to the Empire could be Thrawn. It could be Mara.
could be
And
Luke.
then Last Command. Multiple different interpretations there.
Dark Force Rising is only the Katana fleet.
Nothing else.
The Thrawn Trilogy could refer to either this or the later books. But yeah,
You're not wrong.
it's neat. It's nifty. All right, we got a lot of emails. So if anyone has any questions, I'm making the unilateral decision here. It seemed like it would. Is this a unilateral decision you're okay with? Is there anything else you want to bring up before we get to emails and viewer questions?
I have. No, I think that's good. I
No.
think we're good.
Are you sure? You sounded like you had something else.
Oh yeah, no. Okay, one last thing I wanted to mention. I've been thinking about this all series.
Pellion's MTT.
What? No, right under that. What do you think about the ethics of the good guys using the Nogri as they do? Because okay, they don't trick the Nogri, but they've basically enslaved the no. I mean, the Nogri are serving them. They think that they've got this duty owed to them
Yeah.
when, like, I don't know, like, what the, like,
No, it's definitely
I don't know.
shitty. Like they basically play up the well, I'm the heir to Vader. Like you don't want to be the heir to Vader. You've disavowed Vader heavily, and like the fact that they think
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
doing it for their own good is not great either. It's like no, just leave them because like this could easily result in the Nogri all being killed, like just straight
Yeah,
up
for
dead.
sure.
And the way they keep trying to justify it is like, oh well, they've got a similar ethical code to the Wookiees. So like Chewbacca's like that. It's like no, but you didn't lie to Chewie.
Or did they? Like, Han's like, okay, you start beating up this guy. I'm gonna tase you. It'll be fine. I'll give you 50
Yeah.
credits.
Well, to a certain extent, the like Luke and Leia both make like half-hearted attempts to tell them no, but it at this like by the end they had actually saved the Nogri. So like in the future, it was more of a Chewbacca life debt situation when they started getting like 30 Nogri killed per book. But
But Leia's also like to Luke. She's like, Luke, go put in some FaceTime with them. Like, go, like, at least show up and say hi.
yeah, so
He has that visit to Honiger.
what I think what Luke does there is the most like is the thing that I have the biggest problem with.
Mm.
Uh, or not problem. Like I don't think he had much of a choice. So ultimately, I don't think it was like a horrible thing he did, but I do think it
Luke's
was the
too.
worst part. Like when Leia goes there, is like, okay, you guys are trying to kill me, so please, can we find a way to not do that? So I think the fact that she lies to them at that point is ultimately not horrible. But then she starts like, I think there is an extent to which they're taking advantage of the Nogri that is inappropriate, but
Mm. It's worth it for the consort to the Lady Vader.
yeah.
How like Luke's just like fucking with Han. He's like, no, he's like, call him this. And Han's just like,
Call him Leia's FB. He'll get what it means.
I'm the Prince of Corellia.
That was dumb. I'm
Was
glad. I'm
dumb.
glad that turned out to not be true.
Yes, me too.
That would have been a bridge too far, even
Let's
for
talk about the end.
courtship.
Before we move on to questions, what do you think of the ending of the book? Just to finish the trilogy and everything,
Okay.
to
Do you
have
want to
some
do
pop.
our rankings then, right now? While we talk about that.
You go first.
All right. So I have a visual guide for this. We're 14 books in, so we're not gonna read off all of them. Right now, I have Plagueis at first and Krytos Trap at last, which you also have. Fairly similar for the rest of it. Some differences, but we both have the same 1, 2, and 3 right now, and I think we probably still will after this. With Plagueis, Heir to the Empire, and Dark Force Rising. Uh, Other than like I do have issues with the whole uh so many of the plots not ending up actually mattering, and the just kind of Deus Ex way some of it ends up coming to a conclusion, but not huge problems. Just those are my complaints if I have them. I do think the series got much better as it went along. So as much as I enjoyed like Heir to the Empire and Dark Force Rising, I did like this one the best. And overall, like to me, the best part of the Thrawn trilogy books are more the characters than the overall plot. So the fact that the plot ends up suffering from some of those things doesn't bother me as much because I feel like the character arcs themselves were satisfying enough to make up for it. So for me, I'm putting The Last Command in the first place. It is unseating
Hey,
Plagueis.
right. Yeah, no, you're right. We're gonna basically do the same thing here because Plagueis. Okay, if to read both these books without context, I think Plagueis is better, just because the
Right.
scope of what that one book accomplishes is really incredible. Like the story that it tells, like the intricacies of Plagueis is really impressive. How it works with other EU books
Yeah.
and stuff. But the way that like this book manages to like knock out the trilogy and like just finish it off in such a really great way, like you can't ignore that. I do have issues. I don't like the clones, and I think especially out of the cheesy like the '90s were a cheesy time. I think there's a lot of people that don't like Luke and probably don't like Joruus
It
C'baoth and
didn't
stuff.
bother me as much as I thought it was going to be honest.
Especially if Luke's a puppet
Yeah,
of C'baoth, which I didn't really remember that being
me
the way it
neither.
was. This book too is like the characters that are introduced, like
Yeah,
unreal. You've got Winter, you've got Mara. Of course, like Mara is probably the most prominent of the non-OT characters in the EU. You've got Talon Card, like Wedge is used well, Lando's used well. Every character is basically used well. We get lots of humor with the droids and C3PO. To me, this feels most like a Star Wars movie, although I actually don't think it would have been a good movie
no.
series. It nails the feeling of what it's like to watch a movie. And yeah, so for me, it's got to go number one. Plagueis, I still love you, but you're number two.
Like I think the big difference to me does come down to the characters. Like Plagueis is really good as like this giant source of lore and how it works that all together. But the characters do end up feeling a bit more one dimensional. The characters themselves kind of end up being those lore dumps. Like they're not bad. They're just I don't think they're as well done as characters as what we get with a lot of the Thrawn trilogy, and that's kind of where the Last Command edges out Plagueis for me.
Such a cool character,
Mazik.
I mean, love Mazik. Such a dude.
He was the most 90s thing in this.
Mazik's voice actor, or the voice Mark Thompson uses for him, is really funny. I try to figure out what the accent is. If someone in the chat can help and explain it, I can't. It's like almost like a Brooklyn, like,
Perfect.
God, if you do this, like, it's hard to
That was
explain.
not Brooklyn. That was Southern.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. You'll if you listen to the audiobook and you hear
All
it,
right.
you'll get it.
I will definitely do that.
Shall we move into some viewer
We
emails?
should. And while we're doing this, if people want to ask questions on the stream, you can just tag me and or Eckhart's Ladder. Are you logged into X2 or Eckhart's Ladder
Or
right
my
now?
major.
All right. So if you want to just tag either myself or Eckhart's Ladder in the chat there, then we'll get to those questions after we've dealt with some of the emails. There are a lot of emails from the last couple of weeks.
If you've sent us an email that I feel like we've addressed in the series, I mean in the episode, we'll acknowledge it, but just
there were some that we kind of worked in as we went through as well. But if you would,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say if anyone would like to send in an email for either covering something that we talked about today for us to get to next episode, or if you have any questions you want us to talk about in the first episode of Dark Empire, then that is tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. That's TAPCAF TRANSMISSIONS@gmail.com. I'm pretty sure there's no E. But yeah, go ahead.
So Henry is the first one we got here. He just asked about Niles Ferry. I think we
yeah, we did mostly.
It is nice to see him take down, though. It's a satisfying moment.
Yeah. Well, if he
died.
if he did actually die, you never know.
Cody mentioned this thing that's been going around recently about how the recent visual dictionary has used after and before Star Killer instead of ABY and BBY, but Matt Martin, who's a member of the Lucasfilm Story Group, has acknowledged that that's really just a thing for that visual dictionary to help provide additional context, because it's like when you're 30 years out and the entire book is about, or the entire visual dictionary is about this period that's far more relevant, you might as well, choose that for your epoch rather than.
Yeah. So when people are getting into stuff like that, to make it accessible for a wider audience, it's more important to have it relate well to the stuff that it's talking about. So if you find out that the Rise of Skywalker stuff is happening X years after the Battle of Yavin, that doesn't tell you how it relates to The Force Awakens, which is really what's important. So I do think it's a bit of manufactured outrage It's not like Bob Iger didn't like email them saying we need to make sure that this only references our movies. Like
Hate the
this,
Battle of Yavin. I hate George Lucas.
yeah.
We have to pay George Lucas every time we say BBY.
Oh, God, that shit is just so infuriating. But like, I understand some people don't enjoy the new Star Wars stuff, and there is certainly stuff to criticize. But when you are criticizing stuff, just try to be reasonable about like where you want to draw your lines on what hills you're going to die on, and try to at least consider why things may have been done the way they were done.
Intentions, and like ascribing, some dark malevolence to
Yeah,
Pablo Hidalgo here. It's
like
probably
yeah, like I mean, if you're saying that they're just doing this to be like, what's the goal that they're trying to accomplish with that? Like, is it to keep some sort of consistency so people can more easily tell what's going on within the context of that book, which seems to be what it is, or is it because they're trying to shit on the original trilogy or something? It's like,
and I mean, keep in mind, BBY and ABY is even itself a pretty recent thing.
yeah,
I have books that say before and after Star Wars, as in before and after A New Hope, and AWS and I think it was BWS are used to be ASW and BSW used to be the term.
yeah. There's like
But
5 other pre-existing dating methods, even in universe, let alone
another
everything out universe.
yeah, visual dictionaries have used other epochs as well. Like I think there's one that uses the formation of the empire. But anyway, thanks for the email, Cody. Jack asked about, do you think you'll review Allegiance and Choices of One? I'm just going to say, yeah, we'll get to it eventually.
I'm really looking forward to getting to those ones.
Too. Jeff says, hi guys, I'm enjoying reading some of the books, listening to you guys discuss them. We've heard that a lot too. Lots of feedback from people who are reading the EU for the first time or who are revisiting it. Always nice to hear.
Yep.
Isn't it weird? Okay, we covered this when he asked about how it's kind of weird that Thrawn never followed his plans.
Yeah, a lot of emails about Farrier, actually. Fan favorite character is what we're getting from this.
He's sexy in the comic. He's sexy. No, he's not. He's terrible.
He too does not shower.
He looks like he doesn't. We also covered his next comment. Thank you for the email, Jeff. Chris asks about the parallels between Thrawn and Sun Tzu and the Art of War. I see, like, I guess Sun Tzu does kind of go on the whole know your enemy thing, but I don't know. I guess
so.
Zen,
like the main character that Zen based Thrawn off of is obviously Sherlock Holmes, but I'm pretty sure he also intended it to be like a combination of like Sun Tzu, Robert E. Lee, Erwin Rommel, and someone else, where he was taking elements of it.
Yeah.
But those are the main names that you usually see thrown around by him. Sherlock Holmes is definitely number one. If you had to just pick one, though, it's Sherlock Holmes.
Ian Miller asks, I was wondering, do you have a favorite ship from the Thrawn trilogy? We covered this question with Mara Jade. Do you have a favorite ship, Corey?
I'm pretty sure every ship in the Thrawn trilogy is a Skip Ray blast boat. So
that's also a Weston game ship.
Yeah.
Skip Ray.
I mean, it's not really a series that introduces ships. So
no, really doesn't.
And a lot of novels are kind of like that, where you'll get like general classifications rather than like a specific ship reference. So we'd probably have to like look at the comics more and see what if like that does more.
Could have been even lazy. I mean, it's not lazy. He could have been lazy and just had everything be a Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
And everything be an X-wing or whatever.
Yeah. And like he does reference like stuff like Victory Star Destroyer. There's not really a criticism of what he's doing. It's just I actually think it works better having like this idea that there can be more variation rather than trying to nail down like this is this thing. Some series like Black Fleet Crisis go into a bit more depth, trying to nail that down, where that's kind of what those books are doing. Whereas for this, it's less important for the plot and kind of distracting if he's trying to figure that out when he's still trying to figure out the story for the book. So it's.
Thank you for the question. That was Ian. Joel says, so I'm curious, if Disney / Lucasfilm came to you asking for a pitch for episodes 10 to 12, Since one day there will be one, what would it be about? For me personally, I would want to see Rey and company go into the spirit realm, tie it with stuff like Mortis and whatnot. However, I'm curious to hear your pitch. Corey, do you have an idea for?
I mean, I don't really have any ideas for like a next set of Skywalker saga type movies with like main characters that exist. I've I'm kind of looking forward to uh I would like to get like a trilogy that has more of a focus on space battles would be nice, but like less of a Jedi focus for sure. Um maybe like still have Jedi in some form probably because it's Star Wars. People want lightsaber battles, but I am kind of looking for more of. I'd like a broader galactic view with more space battle stuff. That would be my like 2 line summary of what I'm looking for. Yeah, you.
I mean, if I were forced to continue it, I think there's a YouTuber named Wayward Jedi. He had a cool idea, basically, about how the next trilogy could be about something like that, but also politics and I like I don't can't really think of what I would do from this point on. I think it's best to move on and like will there be a new Skywalker trilogy? I honestly don't know.
I don't think so.
But yeah, I'd like to see. I'm excited for something to be made without all of the baggage that comes with,
I would actually
Star
like
Wars.
if Rey reestablishes the Jedi Order or something. I'd be down for like a show on that more so than movies.
That'd be cool.
Because then it feels like the shows you can be a bit more even with it rather than trying to like tell one broader story all the time. You can get into a bit more of the minutia with it and just set up the order and have that be kind of what they're doing. But I don't know if Daisy Ridley would even want to do that. So,
It'd be so weird too to see movie characters like that. I don't know. But yeah,
well,
that'd
I
be
mean,
cool.
we're getting Kenobi, so
Nick Edwards with the final email question says, "Did either of you find it kind of weird that everyone was hating on Admiral Drayson throughout Chapter 14?
absolutely not. Fuck that guy. He's useless.
So dismayed by him being command. I mean, I think it's just he's a competent commander, but against Thrawn, you need more than competent.
Yeah.
He just wasn't like he totally misused the fleet. He just didn't know how powerful a goal and defense platform was.
Yeah. This was
Like
not really what
instinctful.
he's good at.
Bell Iblis, on the other hand, knows that a Golan can withstand a barrage, so it's just like he's not as experienced, he's not as combat hardened, and doesn't have the same kind of tactical gifts.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Questions in the chat that jumped out at you, Corey?
So it looks like we got a question from Lords of Arnor. It was about the podcast itself, so we'll just read that ourselves. Would you consider making a stream of you and some other Star Wars YouTubers playing the Old West End games? I do Star Wars tabletop stuff. I don't think Justin ever wants to get into Star Wars tabletop stuff. He thinks I'm a big nerd. Valerie said a show on Young Jedi Knights TV show. That's basically what I'm looking for with that. I'd be 100% in for that.
Yeah, Kylo Ren comic has actually been covering that somewhat because it's shown other Jedi from Luke's Academy.
Yeah, but we know they
which
all
is
just
pretty cool.
die, so what's the point?
That is true. It's just cool to see,
Yeah.
like, kind of the specifics.
Just get Adam Driver with like aged down makeup, still the same size as like 14-year-old.
The Raylo happy.
From Tridon, what did you think of the fleet compositions in the Battle of Bilberni?
Pretty good.
Well, I think that kind of gets back
He's
to what
got
we were
strike
talking
cruisers.
about, where it was like the battle was such a secondary thing.
We really just get the numbers. You get the most detail we get is really about the interdictor's positioning.
Yeah.
But that's only because it's relevant for the Smugglers Alliance stuff.
Yeah. And oh shit, was it? It was the assault on Coruscant that had like 7 times as many interdictors as X-Wing thought existed in the galaxy. It was like 30, 14, 32, something massive.
A lot. It was a lot.
But the Thrawn Trilogy does hint at like a more maximalist thing, or maximalist number of ships than X-Wing does, at least. but not quite as much as the Dark Empire stuff. And I think that'll be a fun conversation to have next time.
Agreed.
So for next time, we're doing 3 parts for Dark Empire, right? Or are we doing?
So we'll do the first 6 issues, or is it 5? Whatever. The first issues of Dark Empire, all of Dark Empire 1 for Tuesday.
Yeah. And then we were talking about potentially grouping the rest for Dark Empire together.
Because Empire's End is only like 2 issues.
Yeah. So we've got at least 2 episodes coming up for Dark Empire. If you want to make sure you get that read, the next episode of Tapcaf Transmissions will be up on Mr. Eckhart's Ladder's channel in tentatively the 23rd.
I think we could do for issue. We could just take a week maybe between Dark Empire 2 and Empire's End. Just have like a shorter episode maybe. Because there's a lot to get bogged down on in Dark Empire 2. That's all I'm thinking about. But we'll figure it out.
Yeah. But I think I'd be probably down for 2 shorter episodes closer together for that. We're 3 hours in now to this one.
Damn.
And I guess Marmar is asking, is there going to be another stream tonight? And also, would you guys consider doing a Tapcaf on something that isn't Star Wars? So I think with Tapcaf,
that wasn't Star Wars.
Well, with Tapcaf, we might
probably
just we'd probably call it something else. But
are you streaming tonight, Corey?
I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe we'll play Halo later or something. But
sign off for both of us and say that we love you guys. I'm sorry, I love you. Corey doesn't actually like you guys very much, but
40% of you.
Okay. You're all very special to me in your own little way. Thanks for watching Tapcaf Transmissions. As always, as Corey mentioned, if you want to email us, you can do so at tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on podcast, you can usually find that in the podcast description. If you're on YouTube, it should be down there in the YouTube description as well. We've had some people complain that, or not complain, but point out that we're not on certain podcasts platforms. So if you're listening on like a secondary one and there's one that you prefer more, let us know. Because that's something we have to do manually. We've got to expand each one manually.
Mm-hmm.
So just let me know what you want, and Corey or myself will do so. And yeah.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope your Tapcafs are cheap and your transmissions come through clearly.
Okay.
No, that was terrible. Let's cut that.
Charlie?
Charlie? He's in jail. We can't. Anyways, bye, everyone.